Hi, I'm Irene. I worked 2 jobs, waitressing double shifts, just to help my sister stay afloat. But then she showed up at my job, called me a lowlife in front of a packed restaurant, and walked out like I was nothing. I thought that would be the worst part. But what came after? The lies? The guilt? The way my own parents turned their backs? What do you do when the people you love treat you like a utility instead of a daughter? Some people carry family in their wallets, pictures, phone numbers, emergency contacts. I carry mine in my spine, in the slouch of my shoulders, in the exhaustion that never really lifts. It was around 6:30 in the evening, and I was wiping down the counter at the restaurant before the dinner rush picked up. The overhead lights buzzed softly, and a faint scent of marinara clung to the air. I'd been working double shifts all week, covering for a coworker who quit without notice. My manager barely looked at me anymore, just tossed a dish rag my way and mumbled, "You're a lifesaver." I'm not. I'm just a woman in her 30s who learned too early that when people around you start drowning, they'll grab whatever's closest to stay afloat. And that was always me. Growing up in Sacramento, my parents raised us in a house that looked calm from the outside. White shutters, trimmed lawn. But inside, it was all about who shined the brightest. My sister Kala always had a spotlight. Mom said she had star quality, whatever that meant. Dad called her our little diamond. I was just the steady one, the helper, the problem solver. At first, I wore it like a badge. Who wouldn't want to be dependable? But over time, I noticed something. Kala never had to lift a finger unless it was to point at someone else to do it for her. Usually, that someone was me. A few weeks ago, Mom called during my short break between shifts. I was sitting in my car, engine off, sandwich untouched. "Honey," she started, soft like she always did when she wanted something. "Your sister's had a rough patch lately. I was wondering, could you help cover her rent just until she gets back on her feet?" I didn't answer right away. I stared at the crack in my windshield, the one I couldn't afford to fix. "She's your sister," Mom added, as if that settled everything. "Family helps each other." Dad was silent on the line, but I knew he was there, probably nodding. Always the quiet partner in this twisted little arrangement. They didn't have to say more. They never said more. The burden just rolled downhill, and I caught it, again. I said yes. I always say yes. The next day, I checked my credit card statement out of habit, something in me uneasy. That's when I saw it. 2 separate charges totaling nearly $900. One at a boutique downtown, the other for some online cosmetic brand I'd never heard of. My chest tightened. I knew. Somehow, I just knew. When I called Kala, she answered like nothing was wrong. "Oh, that? Don't be dramatic," she laughed. "I needed a few things. You're the one with the job, right?" I said nothing. "You always said you'd be there for me, and it was just this once, I swear. Don't turn it into a whole thing." Just this once. Funny how just this once always finds its way into the mouths of people who make a habit of taking. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the same patch of water damage from last winter blinking back at me. I thought about the culinary program I'd looked into at the community college. I'd bookmarked it months ago, even saved up for the first semester. That money was gone now. And still, I didn't call her back. I didn't demand the money. I didn't even tell our parents what she'd done. I just kept going. The next morning, I poured black coffee into a chipped mug, buttoned up my server uniform, and walked out the door like nothing was broken. Like I wasn't. Because in this family, silence is survival, and survival is expected. I stared at the phone, heart pounding, not from fear, but from the slow, growing realization. They were never going to stop asking. That realization didn't fade the next day. It stuck with me like smoke in my clothes. Every message from my mother felt heavier. Every ring of my phone made my stomach turn. I stopped checking my balance because I already knew what it would say. The restaurant was packed that Saturday night. Live music, wine flowing, Plates clinking. A good night for tips if your heart wasn't 3 counties away. I kept my head down, moving from table to table, balancing trays and small talk. One table asked for extra breadsticks 4 times. Another tried to flirt. All I could think about was the math in my head. Rent, gas, Cala's bills, groceries, the late-night pharmacy trip I hadn't budgeted for. By 7:45, the dining room buzzed like a beehive. I'd just finished clearing a table near the back when I heard it. Her voice. That's my sister, believe it or not. I didn't have to turn around. I already knew it was Cala. She was seated with 2 people I didn't recognize. She wore a tight black dress, full makeup, and her hair in that styled wave she usually only pulled out for weddings or pity plays. The people with her laughed like she was a celebrity. I stayed behind the partition, praying someone else would take their table. No such luck. Table 15's asking for you, Jessa said, glancing at the screen, then at me. They said you're family. My heart knocked against my ribs. I walked toward the table like I was walking the plank. Cala beamed. There she is. Isn't she cute in her little apron? You guys, this is my sister Irene. She owns this place. She burst into laughter before correcting herself. Kidding. She just works here. I froze mid-step. Her voice was loud enough to catch the attention of the table behind her. My manager, Marco, glanced over. I gave a tight smile and focused on the notepad in my hand. May I take your order? I asked. Cala leaned forward, elbow on the table. You still working nights? I figured you'd have leveled up by now. One of her companions let out a surprised laugh, like they weren't sure if they were allowed to react. I mean, come on, she added, twirling her wine glass. You're really okay being everyone's servant? I couldn't do it. Some of us actually have ambitions, you know? The words didn't hit me like a punch. They cut deeper. The kind of pain that doesn't bleed, just stays under your skin, cold and permanent. I looked at her. Really looked. And then she leaned closer, pretending to fix a stray strand of her hair. Quietly, for me only. You're just a low-life waitress, Irene. That's what you'll always be. I said nothing. I didn't flinch. I walked away without taking their order. Marco was already heading my direction. You okay? He asked. I'll take my break now, I said before he could say more. In the kitchen, I sank onto a crate near the storage shelves. My apron felt like it weighed 50 pounds. I wiped my hands on my jeans, which only made them feel dirtier. My throat tightened, but I wouldn't cry. Not here. Jessa came in a minute later, holding a cup of water. Are you all right? I nodded, lying with the reflex of someone who's done it too many times. Just got dizzy for a second. She didn't press. The rest of my shift blurred. I avoided table 15. Another server picked it up. Cala didn't try to stop me when she left. No wave, no thanks. Just the sound of her heels clicking across the tile floor like nothing had happened. I left work after midnight. The air was crisp, finally cool after a hot day. I walked home. Didn't wait for the bus, didn't call a ride. I needed the silence more than I needed to sit. Her voice looped in my head. You're just a low-life waitress. It was one thing to be taken for granted behind closed doors. But this was different. I didn't cry when I got home. I didn't pour wine or call anyone to vent. I changed into pajamas, sat at the edge of my bed, and just stared at the floor. The clock ticked past 1:30 a.m. Somewhere deep in me, something cracked. Quietly, without ceremony. I couldn't keep letting her do this. And just like that, I knew. This wasn't the worst she could do. It was only the beginning. The next morning came slowly, like a bruise forming under the skin. Quiet at first, then unmistakable. I poured my coffee as usual, staring out the kitchen window at a neighbor walking their dog. It was a Sunday, I think. The kind of day you're supposed to use for rest, or brunch, or walking through a farmer's market with someone who holds your hand. Instead, I sat in silence, my phone screen lit up with unread texts from Cala. Her tone was cheerful, as if nothing had happened, as if humiliating me in front of strangers was a passing cloud we could all forget. Hey you! Want to come over later? I found that movie we used to love as kids. Not an apology, not a single word of remorse. Just more of the same, like always. 3 days later, I stopped by my parents' house to drop off a box of summer clothes they'd asked me to pull from storage. I hadn't planned to stay long. The air always felt heavier there. As I set the box down by the door, I heard voices drifting from the kitchen. Mom, soft and exasperated. Dad, low and calm. A familiar rhythm. "It's not like the last time we paid her credit card bill," my father said. "Irene never found out, and it helped Calla get through that rough patch." I froze. The box slipped slightly from my grip, hitting the floor with a quiet thud. They didn't hear it. Never found out? That rough patch had been the semester Calla went to Paris on a study break. I'd thought she'd saved for it. I'd thought she had a scholarship. I'd even mailed her a care package with my tips tucked inside a book, stupidly proud of her. But now, that had been funded by my parents, behind my back. And worse, they never told me. I left without saying anything. I didn't knock, didn't wait for them to notice. I walked out with the sound of their voices still swirling in my head, like echoes in a house that was never really mine. The next afternoon, I met Camille for lunch at a small sandwich place near her office. We hadn't seen each other in a few weeks, which was rare for us. Normally, she was my person. The one who didn't flinch when I said I was too tired to talk. The one who dropped off soup when I got sick. But something felt off. She was polite, even kind. But her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. She didn't ask much about work or my family, just talked about her new upstairs neighbor who practiced the trumpet too loudly at 10 p.m. Halfway through her salad, she put her fork down and said, "Irene, can I ask you something?" I nodded. "Did you know Calla borrowed money from me?" I blinked. "What?" She said it was just a short-term thing, emergency rent. "I figured you were helping, so she must be good for it. I sent her $400. That was 2 months ago." My mouth went dry. I hadn't known. Of course I hadn't. "She ghosted me after that," Camille continued. "Didn't respond to messages. I didn't want to bring it up, but I think she used me, and I think she used your name to do it." I wanted to say something, anything, but all that came out was, "I'm sorry." She smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was resigned. "I know it's not your fault," she said gently, "but I think I need a little space." That sentence hit harder than I expected. I nodded, even as the pit in my stomach grew. She paid for her half of the meal and stood up. "I'll text you later this month." "Maybe." I watched her leave through the front window, her purse slung casually over her shoulder, the way people walk when they're no longer carrying part of your world. That night, I sat in bed scrolling through social media. Calla had posted a story of her laughing at a rooftop bar, champagne in hand, captioned, "Brunch queens do it better." She didn't look guilty, didn't even look aware. I wondered how someone could cause so much harm and still sleep like a baby. How could she smile like that when everything she touched left someone else hurting? I closed the app, my hands were shaking, and then, without even thinking, I deleted it. All of it. Instagram, Facebook, even the messaging threads with her name. Silence flooded in. I walked to my desk, pulled out an old notebook I hadn't touched in years, and opened to a blank page. I started writing, not to vent, not to accuse, but to track, line by line, every payment, every favor, every lie, not for revenge, for clarity, for me. I didn't need apologies anymore. I needed boundaries, and this time, I was going to draw them. It started with a phone call at 10:17 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was folding laundry, a podcast humming in the background, when the screen lit up with an unfamiliar number. Normally, I'd let it go to voicemail, but something, instinct maybe, made me swipe. "Hello?" A man's voice answered, professional, detached. "Hi, this is Mr. Chen. I'm Calla's landlord. I just wanted to follow up on the rent. Your payment didn't go through for this month. Should I send the invoice again to your email?" I blinked. "My what?" He hesitated. Kala said you usually handle it. She gave me your number in case there were any issues. My fingers tightened around the phone. I never agreed to pay her rent, I said slowly. Please remove my number from your records. There was a pause. Oh, I see. I'll speak to Kala. I hung up without saying goodbye. My breath was shallow, my heart, not racing, boiling. It wasn't just about the money, it was the gall, the entitlement, the way she kept handing out pieces of my life like they were hers to give. I sat down on the edge of my bed, phone still in my hand, and stared at the floor like it had answers. 5 minutes passed. 10. Then I typed out the message. If you ever give my name or number to someone regarding your finances again, I'll involve the police. This isn't a joke. I'm done. I hit send. No emojis. No love you anyway. No explanation. 2 minutes later, she replied. Chill. It's just rent. You always overreact. I tossed the phone onto the couch like it had burned me. Maybe I did overreact for years. And maybe now I was finally reacting just enough. That Friday, Aunt Vivian invited me over for dinner. Her voice was warm, the kind that made you exhale without realizing you'd been holding your breath. Just us, she said. No expectations. Come hungry. I brought a small dessert I didn't bake, but pretended I had. It didn't matter. She smiled like I'd brought her gold. We ate chicken piccata with roasted potatoes and limoni greens. She poured me a glass of wine and sat across the table, eyes kind but searching. I've been meaning to say something, she began. I know your parents lean on you, a lot. I swallowed hard, nodding. She continued. It's not fair. They raised 2 daughters, but only one was ever expected to hold the roof up. My throat tightened. I looked down, blinking fast. She reached across the table, touched my hand. You don't have to keep doing it. You're allowed to say no. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. No one had ever said it so plainly. Not with love. Not with permission. Then the phone rang. It was my mother. Vivian sighed, already knowing. I picked up, only because I didn't want to lie later. Are you talking about us? Mom said, her voice cool. Vivian's always been good at stirring the pot. Mom, we're just having dinner. She cut me off. Don't forget who helped you pay your first month's rent, Irene. Don't let people fill your head with... Vivian took the phone from me, calmly, gracefully, and said, maybe if you raised both daughters equally, Irene wouldn't have to keep cleaning up your mess. She ended the call without another word. My jaw went slack. You didn't have to. I did, she said, pouring another glass, because no one else ever has. After dinner, I helped wash dishes. The silence between us was soft, not awkward. She handed me a towel and said, You're stronger than you think, but strong doesn't mean silent. I went home just before 10. The streets were quiet, headlights smearing against damp asphalt. When I reached my apartment, I didn't turn on the TV or check my phone. I sat at the kitchen table and opened the same notebook from the other night. And this time, instead of listing debts, I made a new list. Boundaries. I won't answer money requests. I won't defend someone who won't defend me. I won't explain my choices to people who only listen to judge. I won't play the villain in someone else's fantasy. I closed the notebook, leaned back, and whispered out loud, I've said yes my whole life. Maybe it's time they hear a no. And if they didn't like what came next, that was their problem, not mine. I went to bed that night with a strange stillness in my chest. No shaking hands, no lump in my throat. Just silence, the kind that fills a room after a door's been closed for good. But that peace lasted less than 36 hours. I woke up Thursday morning to a message that twisted my stomach before I even unlocked the screen. I'm sorry if I've been awful. I don't want to be here anymore. It was from Kala. No punctuation, no follow-up, just that. I shot upright, heart slamming against my ribs. The room suddenly felt cold, despite the spring sun pouring through the window. I dialed her number. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Then again. Each ring felt heavier than the last. No answer. I threw on a sweatshirt and shoes without socks, grabbed my keys, flew down the stairs, phone clutched like a lifeline. I didn't know where I was going. I just couldn't sit still. Couldn't do nothing. I drove. No destination. Just motion. I stopped at red lights without remembering how I got there. When I finally pulled over at a gas station, I called her again. Nothing. 30 minutes later, as I sat frozen in the driver's seat, my phone buzzed. Relax. I was just in a dark place. Thanks for caring, though. I stared at the screen. She knew. She knew exactly what to say to send me spiraling. And worse, she knew I'd come running. Not because I'm weak, but because I'm human. And she'd always treated my empathy like a lever she could pull anytime she needed something. I didn't text back. Instead, I drove home in silence. The only sound was the occasional creak of my tires over pavement. The weather had shifted, sunlight dulled by clouds. That evening, I folded laundry while my phone vibrated again. This time, it was my mother. I didn't pick up. She left a voicemail. Irene, I don't understand how you could abandon your sister when she's clearly suffering. You used to be kind. What happened to you? An hour later, another call. This one from Dad. His voice was heavier, slower. You're not being yourself, sweetheart. That's not how we raised you. Family comes first, always. I put the phone face down on the table and sat beside it like it might explode. What do you say to people who only love the version of you that breaks herself to feed them? I tried writing it out, what I was feeling. But the words felt too polite, too filtered. So I opened my voice memo app and hit record. They don't love me. They love what I do for them, I said softly, almost afraid to hear it out loud. And now that I've stopped, they don't know what to do with me. I didn't cry. Not this time. Instead, I turned off notifications. For 48 hours, I ignored every call, every ding, every desperate emoji. And, like clockwork, the tone shifted. Kala's next message was colder. So I guess you've decided you're better than all of us now. Good to know. Then another. I shouldn't have expected anything from someone who hides behind boundaries to justify being selfish. There it was. The final trick in the guilt playbook, turning blame into a weapon. But this time, it didn't land. On Sunday morning, I sat at the kitchen table. The same spot where I'd once listed boundaries. And I added one more. I won't be manipulated by fear, guilt, or shame. I opened a new message thread. Group text. Just family. I typed slowly, carefully, without rage, without apology. Effective immediately, I am no longer financially responsible for Kala. I will not respond to future requests or third-party pressure. I need space. I need peace. I hope you'll respect that. I read it twice, then hit send. The message went out at 9:04 a.m. I set the phone down, walked to the window, and pulled open the blinds. The sky was clearing, sunlight spilling through clouds like breath after holding it too long. My hands still trembled, but my breath? Steady. What I didn't know then was how far they go to break that peace. 3 mornings passed with no calls, no texts, no knocks. I started to think maybe the silence would hold. Maybe this time they'd heard me. Then, on a quiet Thursday afternoon, while I was walking home from a shift at the cafe, Jessa waved at me from across the street. She looked unusually hesitant, almost sheepish. Hey, she called out as we neared the corner. Weird question, but wasn't that vintage watch yours, the silver one? I swear I saw it on Resell Loop yesterday. My steps slowed. What do you mean? She pulled out her phone, scrolled, then turned the screen toward me. There it was. The vintage silver timepiece I'd spent 4 months saving for. The one I gave Kala on her birthday. The one she cried over, swore she'd keep forever. The tiny inscription still visible in the photo. For every second you dreamed out loud. Love, Irene. The ad was simple. No sentiment, no story. Used but elegant. $225 OBO. My stomach dropped. The world didn't tilt. It tightened. I didn't say anything to Jessa, just thanked her and walked away. I wasn't even mad, not in the hot, yelling way. It was colder than that. She hadn't just taken money. She sold the only thing I gave her from the deepest part of me. She didn't sell the watch. She sold my love. That night, it rained in Sacramento. The soft kind that only hits your windows, not your roof. I made a simple dinner, nothing fancy. Ate alone. Was halfway through washing the dishes when I heard it. Banging. 3 sharp knocks on the front door. Then another 2, faster. I froze. Dish still in hand. I walked quietly toward the peephole. It was Calla. She stood in a white coat, makeup smeared just enough to suggest chaos, but not enough to hide the designer dress beneath it. "Irene!" she shouted. "Open the door!" I didn't move. "I know you're home. I saw your light. Come on!" I slipped the chain lock across and opened the door just a few inches. "What do you want?" I asked. Her eyes flared. "I need a place to crash, just for a couple nights. I got kicked out." My voice stayed low. "You still have that coat and a Louis Vuitton bag. God, is this about appearances now? You think I'm not struggling just because I don't look like it?" I didn't answer. She pressed harder. "You need to let me in. You're my sister. I have nowhere else." I shook my head. "You made this bed, Calla. Don't act shocked, it's cold." Her voice sharpened. "You're seriously going to turn me away? You're so heartless. What kind of sister does that?" I leaned forward just enough for her to hear me clearly. The kind who finally learned how to survive. Then I closed the door. Her voice rose on the other side, something about abandonment, betrayal. But it was muffled now, like yelling from inside a dream. I sat down on the couch. My hands trembled. But they didn't move toward the door. I didn't chase, didn't explain. Later that night, the texts started. "You'll regret this. You're acting like you're better than everyone. Don't forget who helped you when you were nothing." That one hit a nerve. But not for the reason she thought. Because I wasn't nothing I'd never been. I just wasn't hers to use anymore. I typed one line, no punctuation. "I've never been nothing, just invisible to you." Then I blocked the number. I didn't sleep much, but I didn't cry either. In the morning, I changed the locks. The guy from the hardware store did it quickly. No questions. $58, 20 minutes, and a small shake of his head when I handed him the old chain lock. When he left, I stood in the doorway and looked around. The apartment was quiet, my space, my rules. "This place is small," I said aloud, "but it's mine." I walked to the window, opened it, and let the breeze move through the room. "For the first time," I whispered, "it's safe." But I underestimated how far someone will go when they realize they've lost control. The first ping came during my lunch break at the restaurant. I was sitting in the back office, biting into a cold sandwich, when Jessa burst in, phone in hand. "Have you seen this?" she asked, eyes wide. I wiped my hands on a napkin. "Seen what?" She handed me the phone without another word. The screen lit up with an anonymous Instagram post. "Imagine being abandoned by your own sister while struggling with depression. I had to sleep in my car while she blocked my number. I still love her, but she made me feel like nothing." Below the text was a blurred photo of what looked like the front steps of my apartment building. The caption ended with a heart emoji. I scrolled. Hundreds of likes, dozens of comments. "You're so brave." "She'll regret it one day. Blood doesn't mean anything to some people. Praying for you, whoever you are." But I knew who it was. No name, no handle to trace. But I knew. Calla. Jessa hovered. I didn't want to assume, but it kind of sounded personal. I nodded, feeling a cold flush spread through my chest. "It is." Back out on the floor, the shift moved like molasses. One customer I used to serve every Thursday wouldn't meet my eyes. Another, a woman who always asked for me, requested someone else. Whispers trailed behind me, like steam rising off a hot plate. And when I finally checked my phone again at closing, the DMS had started rolling in. You could have saved her life. You're a monster. Some people don't deserve family. I didn't reply. To anyone. I went home that night with my jaw clenched so tight, my teeth ached. I sat at my kitchen table, stared at the dim light flickering through the blinds, and tried to steady my hands. What did I expect? That Calla would give up quietly? That setting boundaries would be enough? She didn't want distance. She wanted war. But this time, I wasn't going to crawl into silence. I opened my notes app and wrote, "There's a difference between helping and being used. I chose to live. And no one gets to shame me for that." I read it 3 times. No edits, no filter. Then I posted it, on my own page, with my own name, and let the world read it how they wanted. The first comments trickled in. A few vague subtweets from cousins I hadn't heard from in months. But then something shifted. Aunt Vivian replied, "You did the right thing. Don't let their noise drown your truth." Another message came from Camille. I saw the post. I'm proud of you, and I'm still here. My shoulders loosened, just a little. That night, the wind picked up again outside. Rain tapping faintly at the window, like it was trying to be gentle with me for once. I was mid-dishwashing when my phone lit up again. Calla. So now you want a public pity war? I stared at the screen, took a breath, typed back. You fired the first shot. I just stopped running. I didn't wait for a reply. I powered off my phone, wiped my hands dry, and leaned against the counter. No more hiding, no more guilt blankets wrapped in apology. Because if this was war, I was finally ready to win on my terms. Winning, it turned out, didn't come with applause. It came with silence. After my post, the social storm quieted, but not in a way that felt victorious. Just still. Like everyone had taken a collective breath and chosen not to exhale around me. A few friends didn't reply to my texts anymore. Camille canceled our usual brunch, no explanation. Even my manager, who used to greet me every shift with a smile and a joke, cut my hours without a word. It's just scheduling, she said, but I saw the way she looked at me now, like I carried something contagious. It was Calla's real gift, not the drama, not the insults, the aftermath, the erosion. She'd always been good at leaving scars where no one could see them. I spent most of that week inside. Curtains drawn halfway, meals kept simple, phone notifications off. But the quiet? It wasn't crushing this time, it was preparation. Then came Aunt Vivian's call on Saturday morning. We're doing a small cookout, family only, she said, her voice light. You don't have to come, but you deserve to show your face. I hesitated. People will stare, I said. She didn't argue. Then stare back. You don't hide from shame you didn't earn. Sunday afternoon came faster than expected. I put on a soft sweater, jeans that fit just right, and pulled my hair into a low knot. Nothing fancy, just clean and confident. The house was already buzzing when I arrived. Lawn chairs dotted the grass, smoke curled from the grill. Laughter floated over from the porch, but it quieted as I stepped into view. I spotted her immediately. Calla, perched on the patio edge like a queen on a throne nobody offered. Legs crossed, drink in hand. Her eyes found me. Cold, unblinking. My mother stood beside her, jaw tight. My father? Sipping lemonade, avoiding eye contact like it might bite him. I nodded at Aunt Vivian, who smiled softly. Brave, I thought. Her, not me. Then it happened. Calla's voice rang out, just loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Even now, she's the victim. She always wanted people to pity her. The words hung in the air like wet laundry, heavy and humiliating. I didn't flinch. I walked toward her, each step measured, the grass crunching under my shoes like it knew something sacred was ending. When I reached her, I didn't raise my voice, didn't point a finger. I just looked at her and said, no. I just wanted to stop bleeding for someone who wouldn't even say thank you. The yard stilled. A cousin near the grill clapped, once, twice, then stopped. No one else moved. I turned to Miriam, who stared at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. Then to Ronald, who shifted his weight and looked past me. I won't keep giving you a daughter to sacrifice, I said quietly. Not anymore. And I walked away, back to my car, back to my life. No one called after me. No one followed. The sun was lower when I got home, streaking amber across the floorboards. I kicked off my shoes, poured a glass of water, and sat on the couch. My phone sat silent. No buzzing, no guilt trip voicemails, no please come back from anyone, just me. And in that space, for the first time in years, I felt something like peace. It didn't come wrapped in a happy ending, but it felt earned. Not all battles end with forgiveness. Some end with freedom. The first few days afterward felt like walking barefoot on new hardwood, quiet, unfamiliar, but solid. I didn't hear from my parents. Not once. No checking in, no guilt-laced prayers or scripture quotes. The air around me had thinned out, and strangely, I could breathe better in it. One night, about a month after the cookout, I sat at my little two-person table, eating reheated soup and a slice of buttered toast. The apartment hummed with the dull purr of the fridge. Outside, someone was walking their dog, its collar tags jingling faintly through the window. No one had texted me all day. I smiled. At first, the silence had felt like punishment. Now it sounded like music. The next morning, I rode the city bus to the community college I'd once only daydreamed about. It was gray outside, the kind of weather that made Sacramento look soft around the edges. I stepped into the student services office and waited behind a young man with earbuds in and a mother wrangling a toddler. When it was my turn, the woman at the desk smiled politely. Program? Culinary arts, I said. Night or weekend courses? Night, I replied, then added, I work full-time. She nodded, typing something. Do you have an emergency contact? I hesitated. There was a time I would have said Calla without thinking, or my parents, even after everything. But now? No one, I said gently. Just me. She didn't flinch, just wrote it down. I paid the deposit with the same card Calla used to drain for shopping trips. It felt poetic. When I left the building, my receipt tucked into my coat pocket, I looked up at the sky. It wasn't sunny, it wasn't raining, just somewhere in between. That night, as I settled into bed with a book, my phone buzzed. One notification, a long message. From Calla. It started with, I was awful, I know that now. She wrote about missing me, about going through a lot, about maybe meeting someday, just to talk. I read it once, then again, and for the first time, I didn't feel anger or pity, just space between us. I didn't reply. I hovered over the delete button, then pressed it. Healing, I'd come to learn, isn't always a homecoming. Sometimes it's a quiet goodbye. The next morning, I opened my kitchen window. A cool breeze drifted in, bringing with it a faint smell of wet pavement and cut grass. I pulled out my old, dog-eared cookbook, the one I'd marked with sticky notes years ago, and tucked away, thinking it was a someday thing. I flipped to a page with a simple chicken and rosemary dish. Comfort food. My kind. I gathered the ingredients, washed my hands, lit the burner. As the oil hissed softly in the pan, I whispered, This time, I cook for me. And I meant it. I didn't win, I just stopped losing. And for once, that was enough. You know, for a long time, I thought love meant saying yes. That loyalty was proven by how much of yourself you were willing to lose for someone else. But I've learned something I wish I'd known sooner. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop. Stop enabling. Stop explaining. Stop shrinking to fit inside someone else's expectations. I didn't walk away because I hated them. I walked away because I finally chose me. If you're watching this and you've been carrying more than your share for too long, maybe it's time to ask yourself, at what cost? Who's taking your energy while calling it love? And what would it look like to protect your peace, even if it means being misunderstood? You don't have to wait for rock bottom to reclaim your life. Sometimes healing doesn't come from reconciliation, it comes from release. And now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family or walk away entirely? What part of this story hit home for you the most? Drop a 1 in the comments if this story touched your heart, or just let me know where you're watching from. And hey, if this didn't speak to you, that's okay too. Tell me why. I'd love to hear your story too. And if you want more real stories like this, raw, honest, and human, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss the next chapter. Thanks for being here. Until next time, I'm Elle, and let me tell you, this past Thanksgiving was one I'll never forget. My family made up a lie to keep me from coming to dinner, but I was the only one left out. They sat around the table, laughing, celebrating, acting like I didn't exist. Why? Because I'm just an AC tech. But here's the kicker. I was the one paying for my sister's college tuition. The same sister who was too ashamed to acknowledge me. The same family who happily took my money, but didn't want me at their table. So I made a decision. A decision that would change everything. The buzzing neon sign of my HVAC shop flickered in the twilight as I locked up for the night. The cold Seattle air bit through my jacket, but there was a warmth in my chest. Thanksgiving was only a few days away, and for once, I wouldn't have to worry about work orders or emergency repairs. I had set everything in place, scheduled jobs, prepared bonuses for my crew, and even picked out a nice bottle of wine to bring to dinner. As I climbed into my truck, my phone rang. My mother's name lit up the screen. I smiled, expecting her usual pre-holiday call about which pie I should bring, pecan or pumpkin. But when I picked up, the tone in her voice immediately sent a chill down my spine. Elle, honey. I wanted to talk to you about Thanksgiving, she said. Something was off. Mom always had a certain sharpness in her voice, a clipped efficiency. But now she sounded hesitant, as if she were about to say something I wouldn't like. Sure, what's up? I replied, shifting the truck into drive. There was a pause, just long enough to make my stomach tighten. We think it would be best if you skip dinner this year. I nearly swerved into the next lane. Wait, what? My grip on the wheel tightened. What do you mean, skip dinner? We always do Thanksgiving together. Mom let out a soft sigh, the kind she used when she was about to feed me a line of well-rehearsed nonsense. Well, it's just that this year we're keeping things a little more formal. Serafina's boyfriend is bringing his parents, and we thought it might be better if it was just close family. I scoffed, my chest tightening. I am close family, Mom. Of course you are, sweetheart, she said quickly, her voice dripping with forced sincerity. It's just, you know how these professional families can be. It's important for Serafina to make a good impression. And there it was. The underlying message hit me like a gut punch. My job, my life, wasn't up to their standards. So what, Mom? Because I don't wear a suit and tie, I'm not good enough to sit at the table? My voice rose, anger bubbling beneath my skin. Elle, don't make this about you. I let out a humorless laugh. Oh, I see. So it's not about me. It's just about making sure Serafina isn't embarrassed by her lowly sister, right? She didn't respond. That silence was enough. I can't believe this, I muttered. Elle, honey, it's just one dinner. We'll make it up to you. Maybe a family brunch next weekend? She offered, as if that would soften the blow. I hung up. I sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, my breathing shallow. One dinner. One dinner after years of helping Serafina, of paying for her tuition, of making sure she never had to worry about a damn thing. And now, I wasn't good enough to be in the same room as her boyfriend's family? As I sat there in the stillness of my truck, my phone vibrated again. A text from my cousin, Genevieve. I need to tell you something. It's about Thanksgiving. I hesitated before opening the message. I overheard Mom and Serafina talking the other day. Serafina told her she didn't want you there because she was afraid it would make her look bad in front of Dorian's parents. She said, and I quote, "I don't want them to think we come from a working-class background." I read the message twice, my stomach sinking. My own sister, the same one whose textbooks, tuition, and rent I had been covering for years, was ashamed of me, ashamed of the work I did, ashamed of the life I built with my own hands. I wanted to throw my phone against the dashboard, but I just sat there, gripping it so tightly my knuckles turned white. Looking back, I should have seen the signs. The way she never invited me to her college events, the way she changed the subject when her friends asked what I did for a living, the way she never introduced me to her boyfriend, even though they had been together for nearly a year. I had ignored it, convinced myself I was being paranoid. But this was undeniable. Thanksgiving Day arrived, and for the first time in my life, I spent it alone. I tried to distract myself, went for a long drive, stopped at a diner for coffee, even called a few friends. But nothing dulled the ache in my chest. That evening, against my better judgment, I checked social media. There they were, smiling family photos, the perfectly set dinner table, Serafina in a sleek dress, beaming next to Dorian, his parents looking equally polished. And I wasn't anywhere in sight. That was the moment something in me shifted. If I wasn't good enough to sit at their table, then my money wasn't good enough to pay for Serafina's tuition. So, I made a decision that would change everything. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter. It wasn't relief exactly, more like clarity. The kind that only comes when you finally stop making excuses for people who don't deserve them. I made my coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and pulled out my laptop. Logging into the university's payment portal had become second nature to me over the years. I knew the password to Serafina's account better than I knew my own streaming login. Due date, 2 weeks. Balance, $21,500. I stared at the number, my fingers hovering over the trackpad. I had covered every single semester since she started law school, never once hesitating. But this time, my cursor moved to Remove Payment Method. A small pop-up appeared. Are you sure you want to remove this account as a payer? This action cannot be undone. I clicked yes without a second thought. The second my laptop snapped shut, my phone buzzed on the table. My mother's name flashed across the screen. I let it ring. Then it rang again. And again. By the fourth call, I sighed and picked up, already bracing myself. Elle. Mom's voice was sharp, exasperated, like she had already been in mid-argument before I even answered. What are you doing? I took a slow sip of my coffee. Good morning to you too, Mom. Don't play games with me, she snapped. Serafina just called, hysterical, saying you cut off her tuition payment. Tell me that's not true. Oh, it's true, I said flatly. Silence. Then a sharp intake of breath. Ella, how could you be so cruel? Cruel, I laughed, a short, humorless sound. That's an interesting choice of words, considering she's the one who got me disinvited from Thanksgiving because she was embarrassed by me. She was just trying to make a good impression on Dorian's family, Mom argued, her tone shifting into that saccharine, guilt-tripping mode she always used when she wanted something from me. You know how these things work. She's young. She doesn't think things through. She's 24, Mom. She's old enough to know exactly what she's doing. Another pause. Then the inevitable. You promised you'd support her through school, Elle. No, I corrected, my grip tightening on my mug. I promised to help my sister, not someone who treats me like I'm disposable. She didn't mean it that way. She meant it exactly that way. Mom let out a frustrated sigh. You're overreacting. Family makes sacrifices for each other. That's just what we do. I swallowed back a bitter laugh. Funny how family only applies when I'm the one giving. When it's my turn to expect a little basic respect, suddenly I'm asking for too much. She needs this, Elle. So did I. Mom fell silent. For once, she didn't have an immediate comeback. No rehearsed lines about what's best for the family or how Serafina's future depended on me. I let the silence stretch before I spoke again, voice steady. I'm done. L? Number. I mean it. I've spent years paying for her education, covering every expense, making sure she never had to worry about a damn thing. And the one time, I needed her to just acknowledge me, she chose to erase me instead. Mom exhaled, exasperated. You're being so dramatic. I think we're done here, I said, ignoring the sharp sting in my chest. Elle, wait. I hung up. For a long moment, I just sat there, my pulse hammering against my ribs. I had done it. I had actually done it. I should have felt guilty. Maybe a part of me did, but it was so small, so buried under years of resentment, that I barely noticed it. Instead, I felt something else. Something dangerously close to satisfaction. I sat in the dim light of my living room, the hum of the city outside barely reaching through the thick glass windows. The half-empty cup of coffee on the table had long since gone cold, but I didn't move. My mind was too busy unraveling years of memories, each one a piece of a puzzle I had refused to see clearly until now. Serafina had been ashamed of me for a long time. I just hadn't wanted to admit it. The signs had always been there. I remembered last Christmas when she threw a big party for her law school friends. I had found out about it only through a stray Instagram post, her smiling face front and center, with a caption about celebrating success with the best people. I hadn't been invited. When I confronted her, she gave me some rushed excuse about how it was just a small thing and not a big deal. I let it slide. Then there was the time I visited her on campus. I had been in the area for a job and figured I'd stop by, take her out to dinner. When she saw me walking toward her dorm, her eyes darted around like she was afraid someone would see me. She barely let me inside, rushing through small talk before making up some excuse about a study group she had to get to. And the introductions. God, the introductions. Whenever I ran into her friends, she never said, "This is my sister Elle." It was always just, "Oh, this is family." Like my actual identity was something best left vague. I had told myself it wasn't intentional, that she was just distracted, busy, young. But it wasn't that. She had been embarrassed by me all along. The realization burned through me, a slow and seething kind of anger that wasn't just about her, but about me, too. For years, I had let this happen. I had let her take from me, let her diminish me, let her get away with things because I thought family meant something. But family shouldn't be conditional, and love shouldn't come with fine print. I turned to my laptop, fingers hovering over the keyboard. It was almost muscle memory by now, logging into the university's payment portal, checking the due dates, making sure everything was squared away. But this time, the screen felt different. Next semester's tuition, $21,500. Due in 2 weeks. I stared at the number, my stomach twisting. How many late nights had I worked to make sure that money was there? How many vacations had I skipped? How many times had I put her needs before my own? And for what? So she could pretend I didn't exist when it was inconvenient? Number not this time. I grabbed my phone and dialed the university's financial office. A polite voice picked up after 2 rings. "How can I assist you today?" "I need to remove myself as the payer on an account," I said, my voice steady. There was a pause. "Are you sure? This will impact the student's enrollment status." I closed my eyes and took a slow breath. I had spent years being sure of things that didn't deserve my certainty. But this, I'm sure. The process took less than 5 minutes. A few verification questions, a final confirmation, and just like that, it was done. I set my phone down and exhaled, waiting for guilt to creep in. It didn't. Instead, all I felt was a strange, unfamiliar kind of relief. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying someone else's burden. But I also knew this was just the beginning. And when Serafina found out, she was going to lose her mind. The first call came less than 24 hours later. I was halfway through my morning coffee when my phone buzzed on the counter. I glanced at the screen, already knowing who it was before I even saw her name. Serafina. I let it ring. It rang again. And again. Then a fourth time. I exhaled slowly, my grip tightening around the mug. I wasn't ready for this conversation. Actually, no, I just didn't owe her this conversation. The buzzing stopped and a voicemail notification popped up. Against my better judgment, I pressed play. Elle, what the hell? I just got an email from the university saying my tuition payment was declined. This has to be a mistake. Call me back. Her voice was shrill, panicked. I set my phone down, taking another sip of coffee. Let her stew in it. Another call, then another, then a text. Elle, if you don't fix this, I won't be able to enroll next semester. You can't just do this to me. I typed out a response. Not my problem. But before I hit send, I stopped. What was the point? She would never understand. No text from me was going to make her suddenly see the years of effort I had put into making her life easier. She only saw what she lost, not what she had been given. I deleted the message and put my phone on silent, because I already knew what was coming next. Serafina wasn't the kind of person who accepted consequences quietly. When she realized I wasn't responding, she turned to the next best thing. Dorian. She showed up at his apartment, hair a mess, eyes wide with panic. He had barely opened the door before she was pushing past him, pacing back and forth across his living room. I can't believe this, she breathed, her hands gripping her temples. Elle cut me off, just like that. No warning, no explanation, nothing. Dorian frowned, shutting the door behind her. Wait, Elle? Your sister Elle? Yes, she snapped. I just got the email. My tuition payment didn't go through. I tried calling her, but she won't answer me. Dorian sat down on the couch, his confusion evident. Hold on, I thought your parents were paying for school? Serafina froze. For the first time in years, she didn't have a rehearsed excuse ready. She never told him Elle was the one paying. Well, they help. But Elle was covering most of it, she muttered, suddenly avoiding his gaze. Dorian's brow furrowed. Most of it? How much are we talking? She let out a nervous laugh. I don't know, a few payments here and there? Serafina. His voice was sharp now. How much? She swallowed. All of it. His expression darkened. So, let me get this straight. Your sister has been paying for your college this entire time, and you let me believe your parents were covering it? She waved a hand, as if brushing it off. It's not a big deal. Dorian cut her off. And wasn't Elle not invited to Thanksgiving? What was that about? Serafina's face flushed. That was different. How? She opened her mouth, but no words came out. And that's when Dorian put it all together. The sister who's been paying for your entire education wasn't good enough to sit at the dinner table with your boyfriend's family? His voice was eerily calm, but there was an edge to it, like he was done. Serafina scrambled to explain. You don't get it, Dorian. It was just about appearances, about making a good impression. It's not like I don't appreciate what Elle's done, but she doesn't understand the world I'm trying to be a part of. Dorian let out a slow breath, shaking his head. You mean the world where you lie about where you come from? The world where the people who actually help you aren't polished enough to acknowledge? Her throat tightened. Wow. It was the only thing he said before he stood up and grabbed his keys. Serafina blinked. Wait! Where are you going? Dorian looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. I need some space. Her stomach dropped. You're seriously mad at me over this? Dorian didn't answer. He just walked out the door. And for the first time, Serafina realized she might have lost more than just her tuition. That night, my phone vibrated with a final text from her. I hope you're happy. You just ruined my life. I stared at the screen, waiting for the guilt to creep in. It didn't. I just set my phone down and finished my coffee. Because if she thought I had ruined her life, She was about to learn that she had done that all on her own. The next call wasn't from Serafina. It was from my mother. I stared at the screen, her name glowing like a warning. Margot Calloway. I could already hear the tone she'd use, the carefully measured disappointment, the soft sighs that carried more weight than words, the underlying message that I had somehow failed her. I let it ring twice before answering. Elle. Mom's voice was sharp, urgent. I just got off the phone with Serafina. She's hysterical. I leaned back against my kitchen counter, tightening my grip on my coffee mug. Yeah? Maybe she should have thought about that before she treated me like I didn't exist. Elle, she scolded, her voice dropping into that motherly, I'm trying to be reasonable tone. She's your sister. You can't just abandon her like this. I exhaled through my nose, forcing myself to stay calm. I didn't abandon her. I just stopped funding her lifestyle. She's just a kid. I laughed, short and humorless. Mom, she's 24. She doesn't know how to handle this kind of setback, Mom pressed. If she has to drop out, it'll ruin her future. Ah, there it was. The real reason she was calling. Not to ask how I was doing after being thrown out of Thanksgiving. Not to apologize for the way I'd been treated. No, this was about damage control, about fixing the mess Serafina had made of her life, and I was supposed to be the one to clean it up. Again. I stayed silent, waiting for her next move. Elle, please, Mom softened, sensing my resistance. You know how hard she's worked to get where she is. I swallowed the bitter taste rising in my throat. And where was she when I was working double shifts to make sure she never had to take out loans? Elle, where was she when she let you uninvite me to Thanksgiving because she was embarrassed by me? Mom let out a long, exasperated sigh. You're making this bigger than it needs to be. I nearly dropped my mug. Are you serious? Mom, she erased me. She's been erasing me for years. She's only calling now because she lost her safety net. She's family, Mom stressed. We help each other. Funny how that only worked one way. I shook my head, pushing off the counter and pacing the kitchen. No, Mom. I helped her. I covered her tuition. I made sure she had a roof over her head. I gave her a future. And she couldn't even give me a seat at the damn dinner table. She's scared, Elle. She's young. She's selfish, I corrected. And I'm done cleaning up after her. There was a long pause. Then, in a voice coated with forced patience, Mom asked, So what do you expect her to do? Just drop out? Not my problem, I said flatly. Elle, she warned. I mean it, Mom, I said, already exhausted. Find someone else to foot the bill. Like who? She shot back. Your father and I can't afford it. You know that. And there it was. The truth buried beneath all the guilt-tripping. She never expected Serafina to figure it out on her own. She expected me to cave. But this time, I wouldn't. I guess Serafina's going to have to learn how to live like the rest of us, I said, reaching for the end call button. Elle? Click. The next few hours were quiet. Too quiet. Then, one by one, the rest of them started calling. Dad was first. Elle, this is going too far. His deep voice rumbled over the phone. You're punishing your own blood. Then, Aunt Delilah. I never thought you'd be so heartless. Uncle Larry, it's just money, Elle. You make plenty. Don't be petty. Cousins, family friends, even people I barely spoke to. All chiming in with some version of Elle. How could you? It was almost impressive, really. How quickly they had rallied behind Serafina. How easily they had turned me into the villain. Not one of them had defended me when I was shut out of Thanksgiving. Not one of them had called to ask how I was feeling. But the second Serafina lost her tuition payments? Suddenly, it was a crisis. I let their messages pile up, unread. Then, just before midnight, Mom called again. This time, I picked up. Let me guess, I said, voice flat. You've gathered the entire family and decided to stage an intervention. Elle, this isn't funny. No, I agreed. It's pathetic. Mom sucked in a breath. How dare you? How dare I? I let out a short, bitter laugh. Where were all of you when I was working weekends, pulling overtime, making sure Serafina had everything she needed? Silence. Where were you when she pretended I didn't exist? When she hid me from her friends? When she made it very clear that my life, my work, wasn't good enough for her? Mom cleared her throat. Elle, it's not like that. It is like that, I snapped. And let me be very clear, Mom. I'm done. Serafina is on her own. I hung up, and I meant every word. But Serafina? She wasn't done fighting. At first it was subtle. A lingering look from a longtime client, a hesitation in the voices of family friends when they spoke to me. I brushed it off, convincing myself I was imagining it. Then, one afternoon, as I was finishing up a routine inspection for Mrs. Carter, a woman who had been using my HVAC services for years, she gave me a pointed look. I never thought you'd abandon your own sister like that, Elle, she said, her voice carrying that same judgmental edge I had come to recognize all too well. I froze, gripping the clipboard in my hands. Excuse me? She shook her head, sighing dramatically. Family is supposed to take care of each other. I just didn't think you were the kind of person to turn your back on your own blood. There it was. I forced a tight smile. Well, Mrs. Carter, I suppose that depends on which version of the story you've heard. She pursed her lips, but didn't say anything else. And I didn't give her the satisfaction of an explanation. Instead, I climbed into my truck, pulled out my phone, and opened social media. And there it was. Serafina had been busy. Her posts were vague but pointed, carefully worded to make herself look like the victim without ever outright mentioning me. Some people love money more than family. So disappointing. I always believed in supporting your siblings. Guess not everyone feels the same. The comments were filled with sympathy. I can't believe your own family would do this to you. You deserve better, babe. Stay strong. You've always been the sweetest. People like that will regret their choices one day. I scrolled through in disbelief. My stomach clenched when I saw familiar names. Distant relatives, family friends. People who hadn't so much as sent me a text after Thanksgiving, now rallying behind her like she was some kind of helpless victim. And then, as if on cue, my phone started ringing. My aunt, then my uncle, then my mother. I silenced every call. I knew what they were going to say before they even opened their mouths. I had gone from being family to the villain in a matter of days, all because I refused to keep playing my role as the silent provider. I tossed my phone onto the passenger seat and started the engine. Enough. I was done letting her control the narrative. I didn't call ahead. I didn't warn her I was coming. I pulled up to Serafina's apartment, walked straight to her door, and knocked. Hard. It took a few moments, but then the door swung open. Serafina stood there, her phone still in her hand, eyes widening just slightly before she schooled her expression into something more composed. Ellie, she said smoothly, to what do I owe the pleasure? I pushed past her into the apartment without waiting for an invitation. She scoffed, closing the door behind me. Oh, come in. Why don't you? I turned to face her, my jaw tight. What the hell do you think you're doing? She blinked, feigning innocence. I have no idea what you're talking about. I laughed coldly, pulling my phone from my pocket and holding up her latest post. Oh, you don't? Because this looks a hell of a lot like you trying to paint me as some heartless monster. Her lips curled into a smirk. I'm just telling the truth. My fingers curled around my phone. The truth? The truth is I paid your tuition for years while you pretended I didn't exist. The truth is I gave you everything, and you still acted like I was beneath you. She crossed her arms. And now you're mad because people are finally seeing who you really are? I took a step closer, lowering my voice. No, Serafina, you should be mad, because this little game you're playing, it won't end the way you think it will. Her smirk faltered just slightly. Oh, please, she scoffed. You think people are going to turn on me? I've built relationships, Elle. I have connections. Meanwhile, what? Fix air conditioners? Do you really think that makes you someone? My jaw tightened, but I didn't let her words sink in. Not anymore. I simply smiled. Go ahead, Serafina. Keep lying. Keep playing your little game. Keep manipulating people into thinking you're the victim. I turned toward the door, my hand on the handle. Then, just before leaving, I looked back at her. Because when this all crashes down on you, I won't be there to save you. And she was about to learn just how alone she really was. Because her perfect little world was already starting to fall apart. I didn't have to do anything. Serafina had spent years building a life on borrowed resources. My money, my sacrifices, my silence. But now that I had cut her off, the foundation beneath her was crumbling. And the best part? She had no one to blame but herself. Dorian was the first to realize something wasn't right. It started with a simple message. Anonymous. Sent to his inbox late at night. Did you know your girlfriend has been lying about who's paying her tuition? At first, he brushed it off. Internet trolls, people with nothing better to do. But something gnawed at him, an uneasy feeling he couldn't shake. He started digging. He contacted the university, pretending to be Serafina. It took him 3 tries to get through to the right department, but when he finally did, the answer was clear. Her tuition hadn't been paid. Not by her. Not by her parents. No record of payment for the upcoming semester. No scheduled transactions. Just a long history of payments from a now-removed sponsor, L. Calloway. That night, when Serafina showed up at his apartment, expecting another evening of wine and carefully curated romance, she was met with something else entirely. Dorian stood at the door, arms crossed, phone in hand. His expression was unreadable, but his voice, cold. Why did I have to hear from someone else that Elle was paying for your education? Serafina blinked. What? Dorian stepped aside, letting her walk in, but she already felt the shift in the air. The warmth between them was gone. I called the university, he continued, shutting the door behind her. I wanted to see if there was a way I could help with your tuition, since you were so stressed about it. But imagine my surprise when they told me you didn't even have a payment plan set up, because your sister was covering everything. Serafina's mouth opened, then closed. She swallowed hard, shaking her head. Dorian, it's not a big deal? His voice was sharp now. You lied to me. You let me believe your parents were paying for school, that you had everything under control, when all along it was Elle's money keeping you afloat. She tried to reach for his hand, her expression melting into something softer, something rehearsed. I just didn't want you to think I was some kind of charity case. Dorian pulled back. Oh, don't give me that. You had no problem using Elle as a walking ATM. And now that she finally stopped funding your life, you're trying to ruin her reputation? Serafina stammered. I just... Dorian let out a humorless laugh. I can't believe I was blind to this. He shook his head, running a hand through his hair. I don't even know who you are anymore. Her chest tightened. Dorian. He exhaled slowly, then met her eyes. I think you should go. She stared at him, stunned. You're breaking up with me? I can't be with someone who lies this easily, he said simply. The words hit her harder than she expected. For the first time, Serafina felt something crack inside her. She turned toward the door, waiting, hoping he would stop her. He didn't. The next morning, she woke up to something even worse. She had barely slept, eyes swollen from crying, her phone clutched in her hands, waiting for a message from Dorian that never came. But there was another notification waiting for her. An email. Subject, final warning, tuition payment past due. She sat up, heart pounding. Dear Ms. Calloway, this is your final notice regarding your outstanding tuition balance. If payment is not received within 48 hours, you will be automatically unenrolled from your courses. Sincerely, University Finance Office. Serafina's stomach dropped. This wasn't happening. She scrambled out of bed, hands shaking as she clicked onto the student portal. The balance was still there. No pending payments. No extensions granted. Her mind raced. A loan. She could apply for a student loan. She pulled up the application form, typing in her parents' information, knowing she'd need them as co-signers. Denied. Bad credit. Too much outstanding debt. She gritted her teeth and tried again, using a different lender. Denied. Her hands clenched into fists. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. This wasn't her life. She picked up her phone, scrolling to Dorian's name. She hesitated, then pressed call. Voicemail. She called again. Voicemail. Tears burned in her eyes as she moved to the next contact. L. Her finger hovered over the dial button. But when she pressed it, the screen immediately flashed. User has blocked you. She was out of options. For the first time, Serafina realized, truly realized, just how alone she was. So Serafina did what she always did. She lashed out. I was in the middle of a staff meeting when the front door to my office slammed open so hard it rattled the glass. The conversation around me died instantly. Every head in the room turned toward the entrance, and there she was. Serafina stood in the doorway, her hair a mess, eyes red-rimmed, breath heaving like she had sprinted here in a blind rage. The look on her face was pure fury. "You ruined my life!" she shrieked. I set my clipboard down, exhaling slowly. "Here we go?" "No," I said, keeping my voice even. "I stopped paying for it. You ruined it yourself." A hush fell over the office. Employees paused mid-task. A couple of clients in the waiting area exchanged nervous glances. But Serafina didn't care. She didn't care about the audience or the scene she was causing. She was here to make sure I suffered. "You abandoned me!" she spat, stepping further inside. "You left me with nothing. How could you do this to your own sister?" I crossed my arms, leaning against my desk. "That's funny. I don't remember you calling me your sister when you were lying to your boyfriend about where your tuition money came from." Her jaw clenched. "That's different." "Is it?" I tilted my head. "Because it seems to me that you only acknowledge me when you need something." Her eyes darted around, as if searching for an ally. Someone who would see her side. Someone who would back her up. No one did. So she turned to Plan B. Lifting her chin, she let her voice rise, ensuring everyone in the room could hear. "She abandoned her own family. Nothing. She's selfish. She only cares about herself." Silence. "She's not who you all think she is." The weight of her words hung in the air, but there was no reaction, no sympathy, no outrage on her behalf. Just the quiet disapproval of people who had seen what kind of person she was in real time. And then, from the corner of the room, my senior employee Harry stepped forward. "Ma'am," he said, his voice calm but firm. "You need to leave." Serafina whirled on him. "Excuse me?" "This is a place of business," Harry continued, unfazed. "And you're disrupting it." "I'm her sister!" she shrieked. Harry barely blinked. "And this is her business. You're trespassing." Serafina let out a strangled, frustrated sound. "You don't understand. She's leaving me with nothing. She's ruining my future." Harry didn't flinch. "No, ma'am. She just stopped letting you take advantage of her." That was it. That was the moment the realization sank in. No one here was on her side. Not anymore. Security arrived within minutes, called in by one of my employees, without me even needing to say a word. They escorted her out as she screamed and cursed, her voice echoing down the street. And just like that, she was gone. Later that night, my phone rang. I almost didn't answer, but a part of me knew this was the last time they'd try. The last time they'd bother. I sighed and picked up. "Elle, we need to talk." Mom's voice was tight. Her usual performance of gentle concern stretched thin. I didn't respond. Dad cleared his throat. "Look, honey, maybe things got out of hand, but Serafina's young. She needs help." I closed my eyes, pressing the phone closer to my ear. "Let me guess. You think I should help her?" Mom exhaled sharply. "Elle, come on. Maybe we can work something out. You're doing well after all." I laughed, low, bitter. "Ah," I said, stretching my legs out on the couch. "So now I'm part of the family again, when you need my money." "Elle, don't be like this," Dad said, his voice stiff. "We just think—" "No." Silence. "You think I'll cave?" That I'll do what I've always done? That I'll sacrifice my peace for her comfort? I shook my head, even though they couldn't see me. But I'm done. Find another ATM. And with that, I hung up. And for the first time, I truly felt free. But freedom comes at a cost. The first few days after cutting ties with my family were eerily quiet. No calls, no texts, no guilt-tripping voicemails trying to twist my own emotions against me. Just silence. It was a strange feeling, this newfound solitude. After years of being bombarded with their demands, their manipulations, their expectations, I was free. And yet, there was still that small part of me that expected my phone to ring at any moment for someone to swoop in with another desperate plea. But no one did. Instead, the days stretched on, peaceful and uninterrupted. And for the first time, I allowed myself to breathe. It was Genevieve who finally broke the silence. I was on my lunch break, sitting outside my office with a coffee in hand, when her name popped up on my phone. I hesitated for a moment before answering. "Hey," I said, leaning back in my chair. "Hey," she replied, her voice softer than usual. "I wanted to check in, see how you're holding up." I exhaled, letting my eyes drift up to the winter sky. "Honestly, better than I expected." There was a pause. Then, "I figured. But I also figured you'd want to know what's going on with them." I didn't ask who them was. I already knew. Still, I didn't respond right away. Did I want to know? Did it even matter? Genevieve took my silence as permission to continue. "Serafina moved back home," she said, her tone neutral. "She's taking a break from school. Says she's going to figure things out, but, well, you know how she is." I closed my eyes, unsurprised. "And your parents?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "They're struggling financially. But, of course, they won't admit you were right," she said with a humorless chuckle. "They're still blaming you for everything, as if it's your fault that Serafina burned every bridge she had." I nodded to myself, taking a sip of my coffee. "Sounds about right." "They'll never change, Elle," she said after a pause. "I hope you know that." "I do," I murmured. "I think I've always known. I just wasn't ready to accept it before." "Well," she sighed, "for what it's worth, I think you did the right thing." A small smile tugged at the corner of my lips. "Thanks, Jen." "Anytime," she said. "And hey, Merry Christmas. You deserve a good one this year." The day before Christmas Eve, I found myself sitting at my desk, staring at expansion plans for my business. It was growing faster than I had ever imagined. More clients, more employees, more opportunities. For so long, my success had felt like something I had to downplay, something I had to apologize for. But not anymore. I wasn't ashamed of the life I had built. I was investing in myself now, not in people who saw me as nothing more than a walking bank account. And that was the most freeing realization of all. That night, as I was winding down for bed, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I glanced at the screen. A text from my mother. "Merry Christmas. We miss you. Let's talk?" I stared at the message for a long time, my fingers hovering over the screen. A year ago, I would have jumped at the chance. I would have let guilt guide me, would have second-guessed myself, would have given in. But not this time. I took a deep breath, exhaled slowly, then deleted the message. I had nothing left to say. For the first time in my life, I chose myself. And it felt damn good. Before we wrap up, let me leave you with something to think about. Life has a way of teaching us hard lessons, especially when it comes to family. We're raised to believe that family is everything, that no matter what, we should always be there for them. But what happens when that loyalty is one-sided? When your sacrifices are expected but never appreciated? Walking away from a toxic family dynamic doesn't mean you don't love them. It doesn't mean you're selfish. It means you're finally choosing yourself. And that's not something to be ashamed of. It's something to be proud of. If there's one thing I hope you take away from my story, it's this. Your worth is not measured by what you can do for others. You are not an ATM. You are not a stepping stone. You deserve respect, even from the people who share your blood. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family? Have you ever walked away from a situation that was draining you? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story resonated with you, if it made you feel seen, drop a 1 in the comments or tell me where you're watching from. If you didn't like it, tell me why. I want to hear your thoughts. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next story. Trust me, we have plenty more to tell. Thanks for watching, and remember, choosing yourself is never the wrong choice. See you in the next one. Hello, my name is Sarah, and this is the story of how my own family tried to erase me. My sister planned the most extravagant birthday party you could imagine. Glitz, luxury, all on my parents' dime. But right before the big day, they dropped a bombshell that changed everything. You see, this wasn't just about a party. It was about power, control, a game I didn't even realize I was a pawn in. My parents had been carefully shaping Isolde's future, using her as their golden child, while cutting me out entirely. I was just a placeholder, disposable the moment she was ready to take my place. And that party? It was more than just a celebration. It was a declaration, a final move in a scheme that had been building for years. I wasn't supposed to find out. I wasn't supposed to fight back. But I did. Because this wasn't just about betrayal. It was about reclaiming everything they tried to steal from me. The Delacroix estate was nothing short of magnificent. A sprawling mansion in the heart of New York, surrounded by manicured gardens and towering iron gates that screamed exclusivity. Every detail of the estate was carefully curated to uphold the illusion of perfection, just like the family that lived inside it. I arrived at the grand hall, where tonight's gathering was in full swing. The air buzzed with laughter, the clinking of expensive glassware, and the low hum of classical music playing from the grand piano in the corner. Everything was orchestrated to perfection, down to the smiles on my parents' faces. Althea Delacroix, my mother, floated through the room with the grace of a queen, greeting guests as if she owned the world. Victor, my father, stood at her side, his voice booming with authority, shaking hands with business partners and influential figures. And then there was Isolde, my younger sister, smiling as she entertained a small group of guests, her beauty and charm making her the perfect Delacroix daughter. I sipped my champagne, watching the scene unfold. To an outsider, our family was untouchable, powerful, elegant, the epitome of high society. But I knew better. I had always known. Even standing in the middle of the celebration, I felt like an outsider. The eldest daughter, the one who never quite fit into their carefully crafted mold. Unlike Isolde, I wasn't meant for display. I was tolerated, acknowledged when necessary, but never celebrated. A sudden hush caught my attention. Across the room, my mother leaned in toward my father, her voice lowered just enough to go unnoticed by the guests. But I was watching her closely. I saw the way her fingers tightened around the stem of her wineglass, the way Victor nodded stiffly at whatever she was saying. I took a step closer, pretending to adjust the bracelet on my wrist, my ears straining to catch their words. "We just need to make sure Isolde doesn't find out. At least not yet." My breath hitched. Find out what? Hours later, I wandered the dimly lit halls of the mansion, my heels clicking softly against the marble floors. The party had begun to wind down, the sounds of conversation fading into the distance. I wasn't ready to leave yet, not with those words still ringing in my ears. A low murmur from the study caught my attention. The heavy wooden door was slightly ajar, candlelight flickering from within. I hesitated for only a moment before stepping closer, careful to remain unseen. Inside, my parents sat across from each other, their expressions no longer warm and composed. Victor's voice was edged with frustration. "We're running out of time. The creditors are circling. If we don't secure more funds, everything we've built will be gone." Althea sighed, swirling the wine in her glass. "That's why we have Isolde. She's our safety net." I stiffened. Victor leaned forward, his voice dropping lower. She doesn't know it yet, but she will do what's necessary. She has to. A sharp wave of anger and confusion crashed over me. My sister, our family's safety net? What did that even mean? I wanted to barge in, to demand answers, but my body remained frozen at the threshold. They spoke about Isolde like she was a pawn in a game, something to be used rather than someone to be protected. A sudden vibration in the room interrupted their conversation. Victor pulled out his phone, his expression darkening as he answered. "I told you not to call me at this hour," he hissed. My heart pounded. Whoever was on the other end of that line was important enough to make my father drop his usual composed act. I pressed myself against the wall, listening intently. "Yes, I understand." "No, she doesn't know yet. I'll handle it." I barely breathed as I heard his footsteps approaching the door. I hurried away before he could see me, my mind racing with unanswered questions. Back at my apartment, I curled up on the couch, my phone resting in my lap. I had spent years keeping my distance from my family, choosing independence over their games of power and deception. But tonight had unsettled me. Something was happening, something bigger than I had realized. I absent-mindedly scrolled through my phone, my fingers tapping on a news notification that had just popped up. My blood ran cold as I read the headline. Exclusive. Delacroix Enterprises facing allegations of financial misconduct. The article detailed suspicious loans, shell companies, and a looming financial crisis that could bring the entire empire crashing down. I sat up, my pulse hammering. This was it. This was why they needed Isolde. My parents weren't just trying to protect the family name, they were using her as a lifeline. My fingers trembled as I dialed Isolde's number. It rang, and rang. She didn't pick up. I exhaled sharply, gripping my phone tighter. She had no idea what was coming. I dialed again, pressing the phone tightly against my ear. "Pick up the phone, Izzy. You need to hear this." No answer. Frustration curled in my chest as I tossed my phone onto the coffee table. My pulse pounded, my thoughts racing. Isolde had always been the one they coddled, the one they shielded from anything unpleasant. But if she didn't hear this from me, she was going to find out the hard way. I grabbed my coat and rushed out the door. The cafe was a picture of luxury, dim lighting, marble floors, a quiet hum of conversation between high society patrons. It was exactly the kind of place my parents loved, where they could play their roles as New York's most sophisticated couple. And there she was. Isolde sat at the corner table, looking radiant as ever, her golden hair cascading in soft curls over her designer dress. Across from her, Victor and Althea sat with their usual poised expressions, a polished mask of warmth and authority. A small leather folder lay open between them. I moved closer, my heels clicking against the floor. Isolde was holding a pen, her delicate fingers hovering over the document inside. Althea's voice was smooth, coaxing. "This isn't just about business, sweetheart. It's about securing your future." Victor nodded, his tone reassuring. "Raphael is a good man. He understands our world. He'll take care of you." I clenched my fists. My stomach twisted. A marriage contract. This wasn't about love. This was a transaction. I watched as Isolde hesitated, chewing her lip, doubt flickering in her expression. If this is really what's best for me, then why do I feel so uneasy? She murmured. A waiter stepped forward, placing a sleek silver pen beside her. I had seen enough. "Izzy! Don't sign that paper!" The cafe fell silent. Heads turned. Isolde startled, her eyes widening as she looked up at me. Victor and Althea's smiles froze, their perfect facade cracking ever so slightly. "Sarah?" Isolde's voice was filled with confusion. I stormed to the table, grabbing the document and scanning the fine print. There it was, buried beneath layers of legal jargon, the clause binding her to Raphael, a man she barely knew, under terms that benefited only my parents. I slapped the papers onto the table. "What the hell is this?" Althea sighed, shaking her head in disapproval. Darling, must you always be so dramatic? Dramatic? My voice shook. You're selling her off like some kind of investment deal, and I'm the dramatic one? Isolde looked between us, her face flushed with embarrassment. Syrah, stop! No, you need to listen to me. This is a setup. They don't care about your happiness, Izzy. They care about their empire. Victor's expression darkened. That's enough. But I wasn't stopping. Not this time. You have no idea what you're signing, I pleaded, turning back to Isolde. They're in trouble, financially, and they're using you to fix it. Isolde's face paled. That's not true. Victor leaned back, voice calm, but edged with warning. You don't know what you're talking about. I stared him down. Oh, but I do. I saw the news, Dad. The leaked reports. The money you've been moving around. Your house of cards is about to collapse, and you're dragging Isolde into it. Isolde blinked rapidly, as if trying to process too much at once. But then she straightened, her lips pressing together. Syrah, she said slowly, her tone shifting. I appreciate your concern, but this is my life. My choice. My breath hitched. Althea reached for Isolde's hand, squeezing it gently. See, sweetheart? Your sister never could stand to see you shine. I felt the air punch out of my lungs. That's not... You always think you know better, Isolde snapped, her voice sharp now. But you don't. Maybe I do want this. Maybe this is what's best for me. I took a step back. For the first time, I saw it. How deep their influence ran. How much they had convinced her that I was the problem. I swallowed hard. My throat burned. One day, you'll see the truth, Izzy, I whispered. And when you do, I just hope it's not too late. I turned and walked away. Behind me, Victor's voice was smooth, reassuring. Ignore her, sweetheart. She's always been dramatic. That night, I sat on my couch, staring at my phone. Part of me wanted to call Isolde again, to keep trying, to make her see. But another part of me knew it was useless. I thought about our childhood, the way our parents had always placed her on a pedestal while I was left to figure things out alone. I had spent years resenting it, but now I saw the real damage. They had molded her into exactly what they needed. Somewhere across the city, Isolde was probably still with them, still hearing their voices, drowning in their influence. She wasn't ready to see the truth. But when she finally did, I just hoped she wouldn't be too far gone. I exhaled and picked up my phone again, typed a message. Izzy, if you ever need me, I'm here. I stared at the screen. Then I deleted it. Maybe she was right. Maybe she was making the right decision. Maybe everything would be okay. I scrolled through my social media feed absent-mindedly, still processing the disaster of my conversation with Isolde. My sister had chosen them, chosen to believe their lies. And there was nothing I could do about it. Then my breath caught. What the hell? My name was trending. A deep, sickening dread settled in my stomach as I clicked on the first article. My pulse pounded in my ears as the headline filled my screen. Syrah de la Croix, the ungrateful heiress who turned her back on family. I read in stunned silence. The article was vicious, a carefully crafted narrative, painting me as a selfish, disloyal daughter who had abandoned her loving parents. It accused me of biting the hand that fed me, of using my family's name to build my success, only to discard them when I no longer needed them. Lies, all of it. The worst part? People were believing it. The comment section was flooded with sympathy for my parents. Strangers lamented how sad it must be for Victor and Althea to have a daughter who had forgotten her roots. Some even suggested that Isolde was the true heir, the only child who truly embodied the Delacroix name. A lump formed in my throat. My fingers clenched into fists. Of course! I should have known. A sharp vibration on the table made me flinch. My phone screen lit up with a name I hadn't seen in weeks. Victor Delacroix. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the decline button. Then, against my better judgment, I answered. The line was silent for a moment before his voice came through, smooth, unhurried. You should have played along, Syrah. I exhaled slowly, gripping my phone tighter. Tell me you're not behind this, I said, my voice dangerously low. Victor chuckled softly. Come now. You and I both know how the world works. You made a mistake, and now you're facing the consequences. I clenched my jaw. You mean I refused to let you manipulate Isolde? Such an ungrateful perspective. His tone was almost amused. You should be thanking us. Do you think anyone would care about you if not for our name? A cold chill ran through me. You don't get to rewrite history, Victor, I spat. Everything I have, I built. You weren't there. Not when I was studying until dawn, not when I was working 20-hour shifts to prove myself. You didn't lift a damn finger. He sighed, as if I were a petulant child. That's where you've always misunderstood. You were never meant to be the heir, Sarah. You were a placeholder. Isolde was always the one who mattered. The words hit harder than I wanted to admit. All the years of striving, of proving myself, of trying to be acknowledged, it had been for nothing. I squeezed my eyes shut, inhaling sharply. Go to hell, I whispered. Victor let out a slow, deliberate breath. Be careful, my dear. If you continue down this path, you may not like what you find. The line went dead. I sat frozen, the phone still pressed against my ear. The finality of his words settled into my bones. Number not this time. Xavier's office was dimly lit, the skyline of New York stretching behind him. He looked up as I entered, his expression already set in concern. I saw the article, he said, pushing a newspaper across the desk. And the others. I barely glanced at it before sinking into the chair opposite him. They're trying to bury me, he nodded. And it's working. I swallowed back the rage boiling in my chest. So what? I should just roll over and let them? Xavier leaned forward, lacing his fingers together. Number, but if you fight back the way they expect you to, you'll lose. They control the media. They control the narrative. I stared at him. Then what do I do? Be smarter. I let out a bitter laugh. Great. Any specifics, or should I just sit here and meditate until inspiration hits? Xavier sighed, rubbing his temple. You need allies, people who know how this game works. I pressed my fingers to my temples. My entire life was being dismantled piece by piece, and I had no way to stop it. My career, my credibility, everything I had fought for. Unless... A thought struck me. A reckless, dangerous thought. Xavier's eyes narrowed as he watched me. Sarah, whatever you're thinking... I ignored him. Instead, I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts. My heart pounded as I hesitated over a name I hadn't seen in years. I pressed call. The line rang once, twice. Then a voice came through. Familiar, distant. Sarah? A pause. I didn't expect to hear from you. I need your help. My voice was steady, but my fingers gripped the phone like a lifeline. The silence on the other end stretched, heavy and uncertain. Then, finally, a quiet sigh. I figured this call was coming, the voice said. I exhaled slowly. I wouldn't have made it if I had another choice. The line crackled slightly before the voice responded. Meet me in an hour, we'll talk. I hung up, staring at my reflection in the darkened window. My own eyes looked unfamiliar. Tired, hardened, carrying a weight I hadn't realized I was holding until now. Then, my phone vibrated again. This time, it wasn't a call. A new headline flashed across my screen. My stomach twisted. They had gone after Xavier. The morning light barely touched my apartment, casting long shadows across the room. I sat on the edge of my couch, scrolling through one article after another, each one worse than the last. The scandal had spread, spiraling beyond just me. Now they were dragging Xavier into it. Fashion powerhouse, Xavier Sinclair, faces backlash for ties to Sarah Delacroix scandal. Elite brands reevaluate contracts amidst Delacroix. Controversy. Is loyalty to the wrong person costing Sinclair? His empire? My hands tightened around my phone. They were coming after anyone close to me. And Xavier, he had spent years building his name, crafting a career independent of his family's wealth. Now, because of me, they were trying to rip it all away. I tried calling him, but it went straight to voicemail. Panic flickered beneath my skin. He had always answered before. A text popped up on my screen. My breath caught as I read it. "We need to talk. Meet me at the studio." I rushed through the city, weaving through the early morning crowd. My mind was spinning. This was never supposed to touch him. When I reached the studio, the receptionist barely had time to nod at me before I pushed through the doors. Inside, the space was eerily quiet. Xavier's usually bustling team was nowhere to be seen. Xavier stood near the large drafting table, hands braced against the edge, staring down at a stack of papers. He didn't look up as I approached. "Xavier," I started carefully. He exhaled sharply, finally lifting his gaze to mine. His face was unreadable, but there was tension in his jaw, in the way his fingers curled into his palms. "Sarah, what the hell is happening?" His voice was controlled, but barely. "Half my investors are pulling back. 3 brands canceled their collaborations overnight, and I just got a call from my PR team warning me that if I don't distance myself from you, my entire business could take a hit." Guilt slammed into me like a freight train. "I didn't mean for this to happen," I whispered. He let out a short, humorless laugh. "Yeah? Well, it's happening." I looked away, my throat tight. "I'll fix this." He shook his head, frustration flashing in his eyes. "How, Sarah?" "Your parents aren't just playing a game. They're launching a full-scale attack, and I'm collateral damage." A sharp pang of anger cut through the guilt. "Then don't stand on the sidelines." I met his stare, unwavering. "You think I don't know how dangerous they are? They've spent my entire life making sure I understood. But I'm not backing down." Xavier studied me for a long moment. Then, finally, he sighed, rubbing his temples. "You're impossible," he muttered. A small smile ghosted my lips. "You've always known that." He gave me a long look before shaking his head. "Fine. Whatever you're planning, I'm in. But I swear to God, if you get me blacklisted in this industry—" I cut him off. "I'm done playing defense. It's time they feel the consequences." The coffee shop was quiet, tucked away in a forgotten corner of the city. The kind of place where secrets could be spoken without fear of eavesdroppers. Across from me sat Marianne Delacroix, my aunt. She was once a force in the Delacroix empire, but years ago she walked away. No one ever said why. "You always were a fighter," she mused, stirring her tea. I didn't smile. "I need information." She raised an eyebrow. "You're coming to me for help? That's a first." I clenched my jaw. I wouldn't be here if I had a choice. Marianne leaned back in her chair, studying me. "You're serious about this, aren't you?" I met her gaze, unflinching. "They destroyed my reputation. They tried to trap Isolde into a marriage for their financial gain. And now they're targeting the people I care about." I paused. "I'm not asking you to pick a side. I just need the truth." A beat of silence, then, slowly, she reached into her bag and pulled out a small USB drive. "Your parents have spent years covering up their financial problems, but even the best liars leave trails." She slid the drive across the table. "If you want to destroy them, this is how you do it." I picked it up, feeling the weight of what was inside. This was it. The weapon I needed, and I was going to use it. I gripped the USB tightly, my mind racing. They have no idea what's coming next. I slid the drive into my coat pocket and walked out of the cafe, the cold air of the city hitting me like a shock. Marianne had given me exactly what I needed, evidence that could ruin my parents for good. But something in her voice, the way she had hesitated before handing it over, unsettled me. I needed to move fast. The restaurant was dimly lit, filled with hushed voices and the soft clinking of silverware. I sat across from Marianne, swirling the wine in my glass, watching her carefully. "You look tense," I said, breaking the silence. Marianne sighed, placing her napkin down. Sarah, I told you I'd help you, and I meant it. But before you go any further, you need to understand what you're up against. I leaned forward. Enlighten me. She studied me for a moment before continuing. Victor isn't just trying to save face. He's desperate, and desperate men do dangerous things. I waited, sensing there was more. She exhaled slowly. He's brought in Victor Radcliffe. The name sent a prickle of unease down my spine. You know who he is? She asked. I nodded. Of course I did. Radcliffe wasn't just a businessman. He was a shark, ruthless. The kind of man who didn't just win deals, he crushed his competitors into the dirt. And if my father had partnered with him, this isn't just about controlling Isolde anymore, Marianne said. Radcliffe is the kind of man who eliminates problems. Permanently. I swallowed, pushing away the small wave of fear curling in my stomach. Then it's time I make the first move, I said. Marianne watched me for a long moment, then sighed. Be careful, Sarah. You're not just fighting your parents anymore. Isolde sat alone in her apartment, the engagement contract spread out on the coffee table before her. The expensive paper, the elegant lettering, it should have reassured her. Instead, it made her feel sick. She rubbed her temples and read the contract again, her eyes scanning over the fine print. And then she saw it. Her hands clenched into fists. The clause was buried deep, almost an afterthought, a legal loophole that tied her financially to the Radcliffe family's assets, not just a marriage, an acquisition. She let out a shaky breath. Sarah had warned her. She had insisted that this wasn't about love, that their parents were using her for leverage. Isolde had refused to believe it. But now, she grabbed her phone, hesitating. She couldn't call Sarah, not yet. Instead, she dialed another number. Hey, she said when the voice on the other end answered. I need you to look at something for me. Her lawyer friend agreed to review the contract. When they called back an hour later, their voice was laced with horror. Isolde, this isn't a marriage agreement. It's a financial takeover. She barely heard the rest of what they said. Her fingers trembled as she ended the call. She looked down at her phone again, at Sarah's number staring back at her. I need to talk to her. But what if she's right? I was halfway through pouring a drink when my phone buzzed. I frowned at the unknown number flashing on the screen. Who the hell is calling me at this hour? I hesitated, then answered. Who is this? A deep chuckle filled the line. Cold, calculated. Miss Delacroix? The voice drawled. I do hope I'm not disturbing you. My stomach twisted. Victor Radcliffe. I straightened, forcing my voice to remain calm. I'd say I'm surprised, but I'm really not. Another laugh. Then you already know why I'm calling. I said nothing. Radcliffe continued. You've been quite a thorn in your father's side. A shame, really. You could have had a comfortable life, but instead you've chosen war. I gritted my teeth. I chose the truth. A pause. Then, truth is a funny thing. It can be twisted, contorted, made to disappear. A chill ran down my spine. You think you scare me? I asked, my voice sharper than I felt. Radcliffe hummed in amusement. Not yet. But you should be scared, Miss Delacroix, because if you continue down this path, you'll lose more than your reputation. I felt my hands shake, but I tightened my grip on the phone. I'm not backing down. A slow exhale. Pity. The line went dead. I stood there, the silence of my apartment pressing in around me. My heart pounded against my ribs. This wasn't just about family anymore. This was war. A sudden knock on my door made me jump. I spun around, my pulse still racing. I moved toward the door cautiously and peered through the peephole. My breath caught. Isolde stood outside, her face pale, tears in her eyes. I hesitated for only a second before yanking the door open. Izzy? My voice was barely a whisper. What are you doing here? Isolde stepped inside, her face pale, her voice barely above a whisper. Sarah, you were right. I froze. For a moment, I couldn't move, couldn't react. The words I had been waiting to hear for so long finally came, yet they didn't bring me relief, only a sharp, painful twist in my chest. She looked exhausted. Dark circles framed her usually bright eyes, and she hugged her arms tightly, as if holding herself together. I gestured toward the couch, and she sank into it, her hands trembling in her lap. I sat across from her, waiting, letting the silence stretch until she was ready to speak. "I read the contract again," she admitted, her voice hoarse. "I had a lawyer look at it too. It's not just a marriage agreement, it's a deal, a way to lock me into their control." She let out a hollow laugh. "They never wanted me to be happy, did they?" I exhaled slowly. "No, Izzy, they never did." Her hands curled into fists. "I feel like such an idiot. I trusted them. I thought they wanted what was best for me." I leaned forward. "You're not an idiot. You were raised to believe in them, just like I was." I hesitated before adding, "But there's no going back now." Her eyes met mine, glassy with unshed tears. "I know." For the first time, a sliver of hope flickered inside me. She was finally seeing the truth, finally breaking free. A sharp chime shattered the moment. Isolde glanced at her phone, and I saw her face drain of color. Her hands shook as she held up the screen. "They know I'm here." A message from Althea. Short, cold. "Come home." Now I crossed my arms, watching as Isolde stared down at her phone. "Then it's time we stop hiding." She looked at me, uncertain. "What do you mean?" I took a deep breath. "We're going to the party, together." The Delacroix mansion was glowing under a sea of golden lights, the driveway filled with luxury cars. The air buzzed with anticipation, the elite of New York gathering for Isolde's grand birthday celebration, a perfect stage for a public spectacle. As we stepped out of the car, the murmurs started. Heads turned, eyes widened. People weren't expecting me to be here, standing beside my sister. Isolde hesitated, her fingers twitching at her side. I reached for her hand, squeezing it once. She squeezed back. Inside, the ballroom was exquisite, decorated in deep blues and shimmering gold. The scent of roses and expensive champagne lingered in the air. Music played softly, and laughter drifted through the space. It was a scene of perfection, the Delacroix name shining like a beacon of power. Until we stepped in. The whispers grew louder. Victor and Althea stood near the center of the room, their smiles frozen in place. I saw the flicker of rage in my father's eyes, the barely contained fury in my mother's stiff posture. I grabbed the microphone from the stage before they could stop me. "Good evening, everyone." My voice rang out through the speakers, silencing the crowd. Althea's face twisted in a forced smile. "Syrah, this is hardly the time." "Oh, I think it's the perfect time." I turned toward the guests. "You all know the Delacroix family. You've seen the polished image, the extravagant parties, the perfect legacy." I let out a dry laugh. "But let's talk about the truth, shall we?" The murmurs grew. Victor took a step forward, but I raised a hand. "I wouldn't if I were you." I turned back to the crowd. "Did you know that my parents arranged a marriage for Isolde? A business deal, disguised as love? Did you know they planned to trade her off like a commodity, tying her financially to a man they barely know, all to save themselves?" Gasps rippled through the room. A few guests exchanged uneasy glances. Cameras started flashing. Victor's mask cracked. "Enough!" But I wasn't done. "The Delacroix empire isn't as untouchable as you think," I continued, my heart pounding. "They're drowning in debt. Their company is crumbling, and they've spent years covering up the truth." Althea's eyes darted around, realizing the attention was shifting. The press had been invited to this event. There was no containing this now. Victor lost control. His face turned red, his voice booming through the hall. "How dare you!" The room fell into stunned silence. I stared at him, unflinching. "You can't control me anymore." The room was in chaos. Guests whispered behind their hands, some pulling out their phones to record. The Delacroix image was shattering in real time. Victor's voice thundered. You were never part of this family. You were a mistake, an embarrassment. You think anyone here cares about you? The words should have hurt. Once they would have. But now they barely registered. Althea turned to Isolde, her voice softer, more insidious. Sweetheart, don't let her ruin this for you. You can still fix this. Walk away from her. Isolde's face twisted with conflict. I didn't say a word. I just looked at her, waiting. She needed to decide. The seconds dragged on, the weight of the moment pressing on everyone in the room. And then, slowly, she took a step forward. Toward me. Gasps filled the air. Victor's expression twisted in fury. Althea's mouth parted in shock. Isolde lifted her chin, her voice shaking but clear. I choose my sister. Victor's face twisted with fury, his voice ice cold. Then you're no daughter of mine. The room was so silent I could hear the faint clinking of a champagne flute as someone shifted uncomfortably. The weight of his words hung in the air, suffocating. Isolde flinched. I saw the moment her resolve wavered, the slight tremble in her fingers as she clenched them into fists. For years, she had been their perfect daughter, the golden child who could do no wrong. And now, in front of an audience of New York's elite, he had cast her out like she was nothing. Althea took a slow step forward, her voice softer but no less cutting. Darling, don't do this. Think about what you're throwing away. Isolde's lips parted, but no words came. She looked lost, torn between the identity she had known all her life and the truth that had finally forced its way into her reality. She already made her choice, I said, stepping closer to my sister, my voice firm. And for once, it was her choice, not yours. Victor's gaze snapped to me, his mouth curling into something cruel. You did this. You poisoned her mind against her family. I let out a bitter laugh. She's not a puppet, Victor. Maybe that's what scares you the most. He exhaled sharply, jaw tightening. Get out! No one in the crowd moved. No one spoke. The Delacroix name had commanded respect for decades, and now, in a single night, its foundation was crumbling. Didn't you hear me? Victor's voice rose, fury barely contained. You're both dead to me. Isolde's breath hitched. I saw the grief flash across her face, the pain of losing the only family she had ever known. But I also saw something else beneath it. A quiet, growing strength. I reached for her hand. Then let's go. The second we stepped outside, the flashing lights were blinding. A wall of cameras, reporters, and onlookers waited, their voices merging into a chaotic blur. Sarah! Isolde! What happened inside? Is it true Victor Delacroix disowned you? Isolde, do you regret your decision? I kept my grip on Isolde's hand, pulling her through the crowd as she struggled to process the sudden shift in her reality. Just minutes ago, she had been the treasured daughter of New York's most powerful family. Now, she was a headline. Isolde stumbled slightly, and I wrapped an arm around her, shielding her as best I could. Ignore them, I murmured. Just keep moving. We barely made it into the car when my phone vibrated. A notification. I glanced down, and my stomach twisted. Victor and Althea had released a statement. We are heartbroken by our daughter Isolde's recent actions. Sarah Delacroix has always sought to divide this family, and unfortunately, she has now dragged her sister into her vendetta. We continue to pray that Isolde will come to her senses and return to the family that loves her. My grip tightened around the phone. Unbelievable! Isolde stared blankly at the screen, her expression unreadable. They're making me look like a weak, confused child. That's what they do, I said. They rewrite the truth to fit their narrative. She exhaled shakily. What if I made a mistake, Sarah? I turned to her, my voice gentle but firm. Do you believe you made a mistake? Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. But... Her phone buzzed in her lap. She picked it up hesitantly, then froze. I frowned. What is it? She turned the screen toward me, her voice barely a whisper. What does Raphael Radcliffe want? I glanced at the message, my jaw tightening. We're about to find out. Hours later, we stood outside an exclusive penthouse, high above the city. The air inside was thick with the scent of expensive whiskey and cigar smoke. The ambiance designed to intimidate. Raphael was waiting. He stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows, a glass in his hand, looking as composed as ever. He was everything our parents had wanted for Isolde. Powerful, poised, untouchable. Isolde shifted beside me, visibly uneasy. I didn't blame her. This wasn't just a social call. Raphael finally turned, his gaze settling on Isolde, with something close to amusement. You've certainly made things interesting. Isolde straightened her shoulders. I assume you didn't call me here for pleasantries. He smirked. Number I wanted to see for myself. She frowned. See what? He stepped forward, setting his drink aside. If you're truly done being a Delacroix, or if this is just another rebellion you'll grow out of. My hands curled into fists. Is that what my parents told you? He barely glanced at me. They don't need to. I understand how people like them think. He looked back at Isolde. And I understand you. You're scared. Everything you've ever known just disappeared, and now you're wondering if you made the right choice. Isolde didn't respond, but I saw the tension in her shoulders. Raphael continued, his voice calm, persuasive. Your parents may have mishandled things, but you know as well as I do. Power matters. Influence matters. Do you really think walking away from them will set you free? A heavy silence stretched between them. You can still fix this, he said, stepping closer. Come back. Reinforce the deal. Marry me. He extended a hand. You'll never have to worry about anything again. Isolde stared at him. I held my breath, watching the war play out in her eyes. Temptation, fear, doubt. Raphael tilted his head slightly, his voice smooth but firm. One last chance, Isolde. What's it going to be? Isolde looked at me, her heart pounding so hard I could almost hear it. I don't know. Her fingers clenched the edge of the chair, knuckles turning white. Across from us, Raphael leaned back in his seat, watching her like a predator studying his prey. The offer still lingered in the air between them. Wealth, power, security. Everything she had ever known. I didn't speak. I didn't push. This was her moment. Raphael exhaled, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. Isolde, you don't have to struggle. You don't have to start over. His voice was smooth, persuasive. All of this? It's already yours. You just have to take it. I could see the temptation flicker in her eyes. A lifetime of privilege, of never having to fight for a thing. Walking away from it wasn't easy. She had never needed to before. For a moment, I thought she might give in. Then she lifted her chin, inhaling sharply. No. Raphael raised an eyebrow. I won't be a pawn in their game anymore, she said, voice shaking but firm. I'm done letting them decide my life for me. A strange silence followed. Raphael set his glass down, with deliberate slowness. Then he smirked. Interesting choice, Isolde. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Let's see how long you last without them. She stiffened, but didn't back down. I reached for her hand, squeezing it once. I guess we'll find out, she murmured. The Delacroix Enterprises headquarters was chaos. Victor stood in his office, eyes locked on the numbers flashing across his computer screen. His hands clenched into fists, the veins in his neck bulging with restrained fury. Investors were pulling out. Clients were severing contracts. The once unshakable Delacroix empire was crumbling beneath him. Althea paced beside him, her normally composed expression unraveling. We can fix this, she muttered, more to herself than to him. We've survived worse. Victor slammed his hand against the desk. Not like this. The financial leaks had been brutal. The carefully curated illusion of their wealth and influence had shattered. And the world was watching. His phone buzzed. He snatched it up. Isolde. His breath steadied. He put the call on speaker. You've had your fun, he said, his voice dangerously low. Now, come home. Silence. Then, no. Victor's grip tightened around the phone. You are making a mistake. I'm making my own decision, Isolde said. For once in my life. Victor exhaled sharply. Do you really think you can survive without us? I guess we'll find out. The call ended. Althea's face was unreadable, but I saw the flicker of something dangerous in her eyes. Victor's hand curled into a fist. If she won't come back willingly. He exhaled through his nose, voice trembling with rage. I'll make her regret this. I was sitting at my kitchen table when my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. A new message. It was from an unknown number. I opened it, my stomach tightening. If you won't come back willingly, I'll make you regret this. I sucked in a breath. My fingers gripped the phone tighter. He wouldn't dare. But the truth was, I wasn't sure. Isolde's apartment was small, modest, a far cry from the luxury she had grown up in. But it was hers. She stood in the middle of the room, arms crossed, staring at the space like she was still trying to believe it was real. The walls were bare, the furniture minimal. There was no staff, no security, no endless resources at her fingertips. Just her. Feels weird, doesn't it? I said, leaning against the kitchen counter. She let out a small, breathy laugh. Yeah, it does. I could see the uncertainty in her eyes, the fear she wouldn't say out loud. She had spent her entire life as a Delacroix, and now she was just… Isolde. You'll get used to it, I said. You'll figure it out. She met my gaze, searching. How did you do it, Sarah? I exhaled. The hard way. She nodded slowly, taking that in. Can I ask you something? She said after a moment. Of course. She hesitated. Are you proud of me? The question caught me off guard. I walked over, placing a hand on her shoulder. Yeah, Izzy. I am. Her eyes shimmered, but she quickly blinked it away. Okay. A small, fragile smile touched her lips. She was still scared, but she was standing on her own. For the first time, she was free. The envelope arrived the next morning. Isolde found it first, sitting on her doorstep. No name, no return address. She brought it inside, her fingers unsteady as she opened it. A single sheet of paper fell into her hands. One sentence. You think this is over? Her breath hitched. My stomach dropped. I grabbed the note from her hands, reading it twice. My fingers curled around the paper. This wasn't over, not even close. I grabbed the letter, my eyes narrowing. They're not done yet. Isolde stood frozen across the room, her arms wrapped around herself. The letter sat on the table between us, its message stark and simple. No signature, no return address, just a single line that sent a shiver down my spine. You think this is over? Silence stretched between us, heavy and unspoken. Do you think it's from him? Isolde finally asked, voice barely above a whisper. I exhaled, shaking my head. It could be Victor. It could be Raphael. Hell, it could be someone we don't even know about yet. Her fingers tightened around the fabric of her sweater. It feels personal. I met her gaze. She wasn't wrong. This wasn't a random threat. This was a promise. Someone still had a stake in this fight. Maybe it's just another scare tactic, I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. And maybe it's time we stop reacting to their games. Isolde hesitated, clearly unconvinced. What if ignoring it makes it worse? I ran a hand through my hair. Then we deal with it, but we don't let it control us. Before she could respond, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen and felt my breath catch. Mom. Isolde's eyes widened as she saw the name flash across the screen. She never calls, I muttered. The ringing continued, filling the room like an alarm neither of us could ignore. I hesitated, then finally swiped to answer. Hello? A beat of silence. Then, Sarah. Althea's voice was softer than I had ever heard it. Almost hesitant. We need to talk. I met her in a small cafe tucked into a quiet part of the city, away from the usual crowd of high society. She had chosen the place, which surprised me. My mother had never been the type to linger in places that lacked prestige. When I walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. Althea Delacroix, the woman who once walked through rooms with effortless grace, always polished, always composed, looked tired. The lines around her eyes were deeper, her usually impeccable hair slightly undone. She was still elegant, still regal, but there was something missing, something broken. I took a slow breath and sat across from her. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. "You look well," she finally said, her voice measured. I let out a dry laugh. "I doubt that's why you called me here." Her lips pressed into a thin line. It's not." I leaned back. "Then say what you need to say." She hesitated, fingers tightening around her coffee cup. "I was wrong." I blinked, caught off guard. She exhaled, eyes dropping to the table. "I let your father dictate everything. I let him convince me that you were dangerous, that you were a threat to the family, and I let myself believe it because it was easier than facing the truth." I crossed my arms. "Which was," she swallowed, "that he was the one who saw you as a threat, not because you were weak, but because you weren't controllable." I let the words settle, waiting for the sting of them to hit, but strangely, they didn't. "Why now?" I asked. She looked up, her gaze weary. "Because I lost both of you, and because, for the first time in my life, I'm not sure if I can fix it." I studied her carefully, searching for the lie, but there wasn't one. "You think an apology changes things?" I asked. Her lips parted slightly, then closed. Finally, she shook her head. I don't." Something inside me loosened, just slightly. Althea Delacroix never admitted defeat, never showed doubt, never let cracks show in her armor. But here she was, acknowledging, maybe for the first time, that she had helped destroy everything she was trying to hold on to. I sighed, rubbing my temple. "I don't know if I can forgive you." She nodded, as if she had expected that. "I don't know if I deserve it." I glanced at the clock. "I should go." I started to rise, but then, "It was never supposed to be you, Sarah." I froze. Her voice wavered, something unreadable in her tone. But I was too afraid to stop it. I turned back slowly, my stomach tightening. "What do you mean?" Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. "Victor always had a plan for Isolde. She was his perfect heir, his golden child. You were never supposed to be in the picture. But then you started succeeding. You built a life outside of his control." I narrowed my eyes. "So he tried to erase me instead?" She exhaled. In his eyes, yes. Something cold settled in my chest. I didn't know what answer I had been expecting, but it didn't make this truth any easier to swallow. I took one last look at her before turning toward the door. This conversation was over. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at my phone. For the first time in years, I scrolled through old messages from my father. I read them one by one, looking for something, anything, that might make me feel something. Anger, sadness, but all I felt was distance. Isolde walked in, excitement buzzing around her. "I got a job offer." I looked up. "That's amazing." She beamed. "It's not glamorous, but it's mine. I start next week." I smiled. She was building her own life, her own path, and for the first time, I believed she would be okay. I glanced back at my phone. Victor's name still sat in my contacts, a lingering shadow of the past. Slowly, deliberately, I deleted his number. No hesitation, no second thoughts. For the first time, I was truly free. Then my phone buzzed. A new message, an unknown number. I frowned, opening it. "You've won, but this isn't over." My blood ran cold. I had been so sure that the war was ending, but now I wasn't so sure. I exhaled, shaking my head. Of course it isn't. The phone screen glowed in the dim light of my apartment. The words, "You've won," But this isn't over. Still burning into my retinas. My stomach twisted, but I wasn't surprised. The Delacroix family never lost without retaliation. A second message popped up. A link. I clicked it, already knowing I wouldn't like what I saw. It was an article, and the headline made my blood turn ice cold. Isolde Delacroix. A fallen heiress spiraling out of control? I skimmed the piece, my grip on the phone tightening with every word. The article painted her as weak, unstable, unable to function without the family's wealth and influence. It hinted that she was emotionally vulnerable, suggested she might be struggling with addiction, and speculated whether she would come crawling back to her parents before she self-destructed. It was calculated, ruthless. This wasn't just a hit piece, it was a leash. They weren't just trying to ruin her reputation. They were trying to scare her into coming back. Isolde stepped into the room, her hair still damp from the shower. Sarah? I turned the phone toward her. She read the headline, and for a moment, she didn't react. Then, her face crumpled. They're trying to break you, I said. But we're not letting that happen. She swallowed hard. What do we do? I picked up my phone again, my voice cold and steady as I dialed. We're ending this. Now, the deep voice on the other end of the line didn't sound surprised. I was wondering when you'd call. Lucas Moreau, a journalist with a reputation for exposing corruption in high places. He had been the one to break the financial scandal about Delacroix Enterprises weeks ago, and I knew he wasn't done yet. I have a story for you, I said. There was a pause. You sure you want to go this route? They started this fight. My fingers tapped against the table. I'm just making sure they don't get the last word. An hour later, I was sitting in a private booth at an upscale restaurant, staring across the table at the man who could help me take them down. Lucas leaned back in his seat, watching me carefully. You want to go public? I nodded. You understand what that means, right? This isn't just about financial corruption anymore. It's about your family, your name. I met his gaze. I know exactly what I'm doing. Isolde sat beside me, tense, silent. I could feel the conflict radiating from her. Sarah. She hesitated. If we do this, it's forever. There's no fixing this. I turned to her. There was never going to be a way to fix this, Izzy. Not after everything they've done. She looked down, her hands curled into fists in her lap. Lucas exhaled, studying me for a long moment. Then, he reached into his bag and pulled out a small recorder. He slid it across the table. Are you sure you want to do this? I pressed the record button, steadying my voice. Let's talk about the Delacroix legacy. The next morning, the headlines exploded. Delacroix heiress speaks out. A family's dark secrets unveiled. I sat in the green room of a national news station, microphone clipped to my blouse, waiting for the segment to go live. The interview had already been recorded, but this was the first time the world would see it. I had told them everything: the financial fraud, the manipulation, the arranged marriage contract, how Victor and Althea had spent years controlling their daughters, bending them to fit the perfect image, and I had proof. Documents, emails, signed agreements. The Delacroix name was under siege. I stared at the television screen as the broadcast began. My own face filled the screen, my voice clear, unwavering. This isn't about revenge, I heard myself say. It's about the truth. My parents built their empire on illusion, and I refuse to be part of that illusion any longer. Isolde sat beside me, silent. Her fingers trembled slightly, but she didn't look away. Then, my phone buzzed. A new notification. I glanced down, and my breath caught in my throat. A breaking news alert. Victor Delacroix presses criminal charges against estranged daughter. My vision blurred. What? Isolde whispered. I clicked the article, scanning the words at lightning speed. My father had accused me of stealing proprietary business documents that could be classified as company property. They weren't just suing me. They were trying to put me behind bars. Isolde gasped, gripping her phone. Sarah, what did they just do? I didn't answer right away. My eyes were still locked on the headline. Victor Delacroix presses criminal charges against estranged daughter. The air in the apartment was thick with tension. My phone buzzed relentlessly with messages, emails, and missed calls. News sites were already running with the story, speculating what this meant for me. And for the Delacroix name. Fraud? Isolde whispered, reading over my shoulder. They're accusing you of fraud? I exhaled through my nose, forcing myself to stay calm. They're claiming I leaked confidential company documents. They want to paint me as a bitter daughter out for revenge. Isolde paced the room, panic rising in her voice. Sarah, this isn't just a lawsuit. This is criminal. If they win, I cut her off. I know. She stopped, staring at me, searching for some sign of fear. But I wouldn't give them that. Before she could say anything else, a sharp knock echoed through the apartment. I turned toward the door, already knowing what was waiting for me. Slowly, I opened it. A man in a suit stood there, holding a thick envelope. Sarah Delacroix? I nodded. He handed me the papers. You've been served. Isolde was pacing again, her hands trembling. Sarah, we have to fight this. I sat at the kitchen table, flipping through the legal documents. My lawyer, Daniel Brooks, was already on speakerphone, his voice calm but serious. This is a power move, he said. Victor knows you have enough dirt on him to ruin him in the court of public opinion, so he's taking this to actual court instead, where his money and influence give him the upper hand. I rubbed my temple. What are our options? 2, Daniel said. We fight it, which will take months, maybe years. Or, I pressed, we give him something bigger to worry about. I looked up, meeting Isolde's gaze. She knew exactly what that meant. She swallowed hard. I don't want to see him in prison, Sarah. My jaw tightened. After everything he's done. He's still our father. Her voice was small, conflicted. He stopped being our father the second he tried to put me in prison. I shot back. Isolde sat down, looking lost. I softened my tone. Izzy, I need to know where you stand. Are you with me, or are you still trying to save him? Tears welled in her eyes. I don't know. I didn't push. Not yet. Daniel sighed on the other end of the call. Look, if you want to fight back, we need leverage. Something that makes this lawsuit the least of his worries. Silence. Then, there's something I never told you about, Dad, Isolde murmured. I turned to her sharply. Daniel spoke first. What do you mean? She hesitated, her fingers twisting together. I overheard something once, years ago, a name. I leaned forward. What name? She wet her lips. Ever heard of Sebastian Vaughn? My stomach dropped. Daniel cursed. Are you serious? I didn't know much about Vaughn, but I knew enough. He wasn't just a businessman, he was a power broker, the kind of man who made people disappear. Isolde's voice was barely above a whisper. I think Dad did business with him. I inhaled sharply. Izzy, do you understand what you're saying? She nodded, her face pale. I was 16. I heard Dad on the phone with him. He was talking about shifting assets, hiding money. I didn't understand at the time. But now, she swallowed. Now, I think it was illegal. Daniel's voice was grim. If Victor was laundering money for Vaughn, this is way bigger than a family feud. We'd need proof. I turned back to Isolde. Are you sure about this? Her expression hardened. I'm sure. I took a deep breath. This wasn't just about protecting ourselves anymore. This was about ending Victor Delacroix. I reached across the table, gripping Isolde's hand. This is how we end him. The federal investigator's voice was steady, but there was a note of curiosity beneath it. You said you have information on Victor Delacroix? I gripped the phone tightly, inhaling slowly. Yes, I said. And it's enough to bring him down. The sterile scent of the federal office filled my lungs as I walked in, Isolde close behind me. Her hand trembled slightly at her side, but she didn't turn back. We were led into a small, windowless room. The investigator, a sharp-eyed man in his 40s, motioned for us to sit. He introduced himself as Agent Kessler and without wasting a moment, he got straight to the point. "You understand what you're doing here?" he asked. I met his gaze. "Yes." Isolde hesitated, but after a deep breath, she nodded too. I pulled out the documents, the notes Isolde had given me, the ones implicating our father in financial crimes that went beyond fraud. Kessler flipped through them, expression unreadable. Then he leaned back. "We've been watching Victor Delacroix for years," he admitted. "But every time we got close, the trail went cold. No witnesses, no paper trail, just whispers." I exhaled. "Not anymore." Kessler tapped his fingers against the desk, considering. "If we act on this, he'll know exactly who turned him in. Are you prepared for that?" I didn't hesitate. "He already made his move. This is ours." The agent studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "This is enough to open a full investigation. But be warned, once we go after him, he won't go down quietly." "Fraud?" Isolde whispered, reading over my shoulder. "They're accusing you of fraud?" I exhaled through my nose, forcing myself to stay calm. "They're claiming I leaked confidential company documents. They want to paint me as a bitter daughter out for revenge." Isolde paced the room, panic rising in her voice. "Sarah, this isn't just a lawsuit. This is criminal. If they win—" I cut her off. "I know." She stopped, staring at me, searching for some sign of fear. But I wouldn't give them that. Before she could say anything else, a sharp knock echoed through the apartment. I turned toward the door, already knowing what was waiting for me. Slowly, I opened it. A man in a suit stood there, holding a thick envelope. "Sarah Delacroix?" I nodded. He handed me the papers. "You've been served." Isolde was pacing again, her hands trembling. "Sarah, we have to fight this." I sat at the kitchen table, flipping through the legal documents. My lawyer, Daniel Brooks, was already on speakerphone, his voice calm but serious. "This is a power move," he said. "Victor knows you have enough dirt on him to ruin him in the court of public opinion, so he's taking this to actual court instead, where his money and influence give him the upper hand." I rubbed my temple. "What are our options?" "Two," Daniel said. "We fight it, which will take months, maybe years. Or, I pressed, "we give him something bigger to worry about." I looked up, meeting Isolde's gaze. She knew exactly what that meant. "I don't—" She swallowed hard. "I don't want to see him in prison, Sarah." My jaw tightened. "After everything he's done, he's still our father." Her voice was small, conflicted. "He stopped being our father the second he tried to put me in prison," I shot back. Isolde sat down, looking lost. I softened my tone. "Izzy, I need to know where you stand. Are you with me, or are you still trying to save him?" Tears welled in her eyes. "I don't know. I didn't push. Not yet." Daniel sighed on the other end of the call. "Look, if you want to fight back, we need leverage. Something that makes this lawsuit the least of his worries." Silence. Then, "There's something I never told you about Dad," Isolde murmured. I turned to her sharply. Daniel spoke first. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, her fingers twisting together. "I overheard something once. Years ago. A name." I leaned forward. "What name?" She wet her lips. "Ever heard of Sebastian Vaughn?" My stomach dropped. Daniel cursed. "Are you serious?" I didn't know much about Vaughn, but I knew enough. He wasn't just a businessman, he was a power broker. The kind of man who made people disappear. Isolde's voice was barely above a whisper. "I think Dad did business with him." I inhaled sharply. "Izzy, do you understand what you're saying?" She nodded, her face pale. "I was 16. I heard Dad on the phone with him. He was talking about shifting assets, hiding money. I didn't understand at the time. But now—" She swallowed. "Now, I think it was illegal." Daniel's voice was grim. "If Victor was laundering money for Vaughn, this is way bigger than a family feud. We'd need proof." I turned back to Isolde. "Are you sure about this?" Her expression hardened. "I'm sure." I took a deep breath. This wasn't just about protecting ourselves anymore. This was about ending Victor Delacroix. I reached across the table, gripping Isolde's hand. This is how we end him. The federal investigator's voice was steady, but there was a note of curiosity beneath it. You said you have information on Victor Delacroix? I gripped the phone tightly, inhaling slowly. Yes, I said. And it's enough to bring him down. The sterile scent of the federal office filled my lungs as I walked in, Isolde close behind me. Her hand trembled slightly at her side, but she didn't turn back. We were led into a small, windowless room. The investigator, a sharp-eyed man in his 40s, motioned for us to sit. He introduced himself as Agent Kessler, and without wasting a moment, he got straight to the point. You understand what you're doing here? He asked. I met his gaze. Yes. Isolde hesitated, but after a deep breath, she nodded too. I pulled out the documents, the notes Isolde had given me, the ones implicating our father in financial crimes that went beyond fraud. Kessler flipped through them, expression unreadable. Then he leaned back. We've been watching Victor Delacroix for years, he admitted. But every time we got close, the trail went cold. No witnesses, no paper trail, just whispers. I exhaled. Not anymore. Kessler tapped his fingers against the desk, considering. If we act on this, he'll know exactly who turned him in. Are you prepared for that? I didn't hesitate. He already made his move. This is ours. The agent studied me for a long moment, then nodded. This is enough to open a full investigation. But be warned, once we go after him, he won't go down quietly. Isolde swallowed hard. I reached over, squeezing her hand. We're ready, I said. As we walked out of the office, the weight of what we had just done settled over me. The choice was made. There was no undoing it now. Then, just as we stepped outside, I felt it. An eerie sensation, like someone was watching us. Across the street, a black SUV was parked, windows tinted. A shadowed figure inside tilted their head slightly, as if acknowledging our presence. I felt a chill run down my spine. They're making their move, a voice murmured. Glass shattered against the wall. Victor stood in his penthouse office, his expression twisted with rage. They really think they can destroy me? Althea sat across from him, hands folded in her lap. But she wasn't her usual composed self. She was pale, eyes unfocused. Victor, they went to the feds, she murmured. You need to stop this. He turned to her, his lips curling into something that wasn't quite a smile. Stop! He chuckled darkly. No, Althea, this isn't the end. This is war. The meeting request came late that evening. Althea wanted to see me, alone. I almost didn't go, but curiosity and something deeper made me agree. The lounge was dimly lit, filled with the quiet hum of conversation. My mother sat at a private corner table, a single glass of wine in front of her. I approached cautiously, but she looked different. Her usual air of untouchable grace was gone. Her posture was slumped, dark circles under her eyes. For the first time in my life, Althea Delacroix looked human. I sat across from her, waiting. Victor is losing control, she said, her voice quiet. I raised an eyebrow. He never had it. She flinched slightly. You don't understand. You think you've won, but you don't know what he's capable of when he feels cornered. I leaned forward. Then tell me. She sighed, swirling the wine in her glass. I should have left him years ago, but power is a prison, Sarah, and I was too afraid to be nothing. I blinked. Is that supposed to be an apology? She exhaled, looking down. It's the truth. Something bitter twisted in my chest. For years I had begged for this, for her to see me, to acknowledge what she had done. And now, when I finally had it, I wasn't sure it mattered anymore. You had a choice, I said, voice steady, and you chose him, every time. She didn't argue. Instead, she reached across the table, gripping my wrist. Her fingers were cold. If you go through with this, she whispered, he won't just fight back, he'll destroy you. I held her gaze. Then, slowly, I pulled my hand away. Let him try. That night, I sat in my apartment, the weight of the day pressing against my shoulders. Xavier was on the phone, pacing. Sarah, this is getting dangerous. If Victor retaliates— I know, I interrupted. I'm ready. Isolde sat nearby, typing furiously on her laptop. She had spent the last few days searching for apartments, applying for jobs, building the life she had never been allowed to have. She looked up, giving me a small, determined nod. I'm not going back. Pride swelled in my chest. She was finally standing on her own. Then, my phone buzzed. A private message. You should have listened to your mother. My stomach clenched. I moved toward the window, peering down at the street below. A black car was parked outside. The engine was running. A figure in a suit stepped out, walking toward the entrance. I took a slow breath, my pulse steadying. Here we go. A knock on the door echoed through the apartment. Miss Delacroix, we need to talk. I stared at the door, my pulse steady despite the unease settling in my gut. Midnight. No one should be here at this hour unless they had something urgent or dangerous to say. Isolde sat up from the couch, eyes wide. Syrah, should we call someone? I shook my head. Number, I'll handle it. Slowly, I stepped toward the door and pulled it open. Two men in suits stood there, their expressions neutral but calculated. I recognized them immediately, Victor's top lawyers. Miss Delacroix, the taller one said smoothly, adjusting his tie. We were hoping for a moment of your time. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. You've got one. He exchanged a glance with his colleague before speaking. You've made quite a mess, haven't you? The federal investigation, the media storm, the public spectacle of it all. Your father wishes to resolve this quietly before it escalates further. I scoffed. It's already escalated. That was his doing, not mine. The shorter man cleared his throat. Be that as it may, you still have a choice. Withdraw your cooperation with the feds, drop any further public statements, and walk away. Do that, and Victor Delacroix is willing to ensure you walk away financially stable. Refuse, and he will spare no expense in making sure you're buried beneath lawsuits and legal fees until you have nothing left. A threat. I let the words settle between us for a moment before responding. Tell my father I'm not afraid of him, I said calmly. And I won't be bullied into silence. The taller man sighed, as if I'd disappointed him. That's unfortunate. You could have made this easier on yourself. They turned and walked down the hall without another word. I shut the door, exhaling. That was expected, I muttered. Isolde bit her lip. Sarah, are you sure? Another knock. This time, it was slower, heavier. I turned to the door again, but I already knew. I opened it. Victor stood there, smirking. Did you really think I'd let this end without seeing you one last time? Victor walked into my apartment like he still owned it. Isolde tensed behind me, but I didn't move. Don't bother sitting down, I said coolly. This won't take long. He chuckled, shaking his head. You always did have a dramatic streak, just like your mother. I clenched my jaw. What do you want? Victor took a slow step forward, eyes dark. I want you to stop this childish rebellion before you do something you regret. I laughed. Actually laughed. Regret? I think you're the one with regrets, Victor. His smirk faltered. You're making a mistake, Sarah. You're nothing without me. Without this family. I stepped closer, meeting his gaze. That's where you're wrong. I was nothing with this family. His jaw tightened, his fingers curling into fists. For years, I had been afraid of that look. Not anymore. Look at you, I murmured. You're angry, but not just at me. You're afraid, aren't you? Because for the first time in your life, you're losing. Victor's nostrils flared. I've never lost a battle in my life. Then you're about to experience your first, I shot back. Silence stretched between us. Then, behind me, Isolde spoke. Is this who you really are? Victor turned, surprised by the small, trembling voice behind me. Isolde's expression wasn't angry. It was devastated. "You always told me Sarah was the problem," she whispered. "You made me believe she was the reason our family was broken. But it was you. It was always you." Victor's mask of control cracked. "Isolde, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," she interrupted. "You never loved us. You only loved control." A flicker of something crossed his face. Shock, maybe even hurt. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by cold fury. He turned back to me. "Drop this fight, Sarah," he ordered. "You can still walk away." I tilted my head. "What happens if I don't?" His voice dropped into something almost inhuman. "Then I will destroy you." The room felt suffocating, heavy with the weight of everything unspoken between us. I held my ground. "Go ahead," I said. "Try me." Victor's fists clenched, his lips parting slightly, as if he were about to say something else. One final attempt to regain control. Then, for the first time in his life, he said nothing. Instead, he turned on his heel and stormed out the door. I followed him out onto the apartment hallway, watching as he disappeared down the stairs. But before stepping into the waiting black car, he turned back one last time. His voice was quiet, but laced with venom. "Enjoy your little victory, Sarah. It won't last." I didn't respond. I simply watched as the car disappeared into the night. I watched the taillights of Victor's car disappear into the city, my breath steady, my mind sharper than ever. "We'll see about that," I whispered. The apartment was silent, except for the faint hum of the city below. Isolde sat on the couch, her hands clasped together tightly. Neither of us spoke for a moment. It felt like the end. But I knew better. I was right. My phone vibrated on the kitchen counter. At first, I thought it was another empty threat from Victor, another meaningless attempt at intimidation. But when I saw the notification, my stomach dropped. Breaking news. Business mogul Serafina Delacroix, accused of financial fraud. I stared at the headline, my heartbeat hammering in my ears. "What is it?" Isolde asked, pushing off the couch. I turned the screen toward her. She gasped. "No," she whispered. "Not again." Victor had made his move. He wasn't just retaliating, he was trying to erase me. I threw on a coat and stormed out the door, Isolde right behind me. We rushed into a cab, heading straight to Lucas Moreau's office. "He's desperate," I muttered. "This is all he has left." "Then why does it feel like he still has control?" Isolde murmured. "He doesn't." I clenched my fists. "Not anymore." Lucas Moreau opened the door before I could even knock. His office was dimly lit, his desk covered in scattered notes and open files. He looked up at me, his expression unreadable. "Sarah?" he said. "What's going on?" I dropped my phone on his desk, the news article still glowing on the screen. "We're taking him down," I said. Lucas's fingers flew over the keyboard as he pulled up files, emails, documents. "This isn't just financial fraud," he muttered. "Your father! He's been hiding money offshore, funneling it through shell companies. If this gets out—" "It will," I cut in. Isolde sat beside me, pale but focused. "What happens next?" she asked. Lucas exhaled. "We send it to the authorities, to the press. But once we do this, there's no going back." I didn't hesitate. "Send it." Lucas hit a key, and just like that, the truth was unleashed. The first news alert came minutes later. Victor Delacroix, under federal investigation for fraud and money laundering. I exhaled, a tightness in my chest finally loosening. "Goodbye, Victor," I murmured. Victor sat in his office, the television blaring behind him. His hands curled into fists as the headline flashed across the screen. "No," he muttered. "This isn't happening." Phones rang off the hook. His lawyers scrambled, his empire cracking beneath the weight of the truth. But there was no escaping this. When the police arrived, the cameras were already waiting. They escorted him outside, handcuffs glinting in the light. Reporters shouted questions. Flashbulbs exploded. And then, As they shoved him into the back of the police car, Victor turned to the cameras, his expression eerily calm. "This isn't the end," he said. "You'll see." The television flickered in the dimly lit apartment, casting sharp shadows along the walls. News anchors spoke in measured, serious tones, their voices a dull hum in the background. Every major network was covering the collapse of the Delacroix empire. Victor's arrest, the lawsuits, the financial ruin. It was all public now, displayed in headlines across the country. I sat on the couch, my body heavy with exhaustion, yet strangely light. For the first time in years, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. The weight of my father's influence, his manipulation, his threats, they were gone. But the silence felt different than I expected. It wasn't peace, not yet. Across from me, Isolde stared at the screen, her expression unreadable. She had been quiet ever since we watched Victor being led into the police car. Even now, as his empire burned, she looked lost. She had fought so hard to break free, but in the end, we had still lost something. "Are you okay?" I asked. She blinked as if waking from a trance, then exhaled softly. "I don't know," she admitted. "It's over, but he's still our father. No matter what he did, I can't just turn it off." I nodded. I understood that feeling all too well. Neither of us spoke after that. The TV droned on, listing the names of people who had once stood beside Victor, but were now turning against him to save themselves. Then, a sharp knock at the door broke the silence. Isolde flinched, then shot me a nervous glance. I rose to my feet and approached the door cautiously. My body still hadn't adjusted to the idea that Victor wasn't lurking in the background, waiting for his next move. I opened the door. No one was there, only an envelope resting on the floor. I picked it up, recognizing the handwriting instantly. "Althea." I turned to Isolde, holding it up. Her face paled. "Should we even open it?" she asked quietly. I studied the envelope for a long moment, then sighed. Only one way to find out. We sat at the kitchen table, the letter unfolded between us. Isolde took a deep breath and began to read. It wasn't an apology, not really. Althea wrote about her regrets, but not about what she had done, only about what she had lost. She claimed she had known, deep down, that Victor would fall eventually, that his power was built on secrets and lies, and nothing like that could last forever. But she also wrote about fear, how she had stayed because it was easier, because Victor had made sure she felt there was no escape. And then, the final warning. Power doesn't just disappear. Someone will take his place. I clenched my jaw, gripping the edge of the table. Isolde set the letter down, her expression clouded. "I don't know what to think." "Don't," I said. "It doesn't matter." But I stood abruptly, taking the letter in my hands. I walked to the fireplace, struck a match, and let the flame lick at the edges of the paper. It curled, darkening, turning to ash before floating into the embers below. Isolde watched, wide-eyed. "She made her choice," I said firmly. "Now we make ours." She hesitated, then nodded. A month passed. The Delacroix name no longer carried the power it once did. Investors fled, companies distanced themselves, and the empire my father had built was gone. Isolde found a job, her first real one, where no one knew her last name. She was learning to live a life without influence, without privilege. It wasn't easy, but she was doing it. And for the first time in years, I had choices of my own. A career opportunity, one that had nothing to do with the Delacroix legacy. We were finally free. Or at least, we thought we were. As we sat in a small cafe, sipping coffee, a television above the counter flickered with breaking news. A new name had surfaced, an unfamiliar figure stepping into the space Victor had left behind. A new power rising from the ashes. I exhaled, shaking my head as I turned to Isolde. "Think we'll ever be done with this family?" She smirked, stirring her coffee. "Do we ever get to be?" The air was crisp and cool, The kind of evening that made New York City feel almost magical. From the rooftop cafe, the skyline stretched endlessly, golden lights flickering like distant stars. It was the first time in years that I truly took the time to appreciate it. Isolde sat across from me, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. There was something different about her now, lighter, freer. "Probably not," she said with a soft smile, shaking her head. "But at least this time, we're ready." I exhaled, leaning back in my chair. The weight of everything we had endured was still there, but it no longer suffocated me. We sat in silence for a few moments, watching the city move below us. "I still think about them," Isolde admitted, voice barely above a whisper. I looked at her, waiting. "Even after everything," she continued, "part of me wonders if they ever truly loved us, or if we were just investments." The pain in her voice made my chest tighten. "They were never capable of loving us the way we needed," I said. "That's their failure, not ours." She nodded, but I could tell she was still processing it all. And that was okay. Healing wasn't a straight line. For the first time in a long time, there was no tension between us. No resentment, no doubt. Just quiet understanding. Then, my phone buzzed. I glanced down at the caller ID and raised an eyebrow. "Well, this is unexpected." Isolde leaned forward. "Who is it?" The office was sleek, modern, far removed from the cold grandeur of the Delacroix estate. It was the kind of place where real power was built, not just inherited. We sat across from a woman in a crisp suit, her sharp eyes studying us carefully. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. "You two have made quite the impression," she said, tapping a neatly stacked file on her desk. "People have been watching." "Should we be concerned about that?" I asked. She smirked. "Not in the way you think. You took down one of the most powerful men in New York. That kind of thing doesn't go unnoticed." I exchanged a glance with Isolde. The woman continued. "We believe your talents could be useful. Both of you." She slid 2 envelopes across the table. "Inside, you'll find 2 very different opportunities. One for you, Sarah, and one for Isolde. Neither has anything to do with your family's name. No shadows, no legacy. Just a chance to build something of your own." I opened mine, scanning the details. It was real. A job offer. A powerful one. Not a handout, not a sympathy gesture. A real opportunity. I looked over at Isolde, whose hands trembled slightly as she held her own envelope. For the first time, we had choices. "So," I said, tapping my fingers against the table, thinking. "What do we say, Izzy?" She met my gaze, and for the first time in a long time, she grinned. "I think it's time we take control of our own future." A month later, the city bustled around us as we walked side by side down a busy street. Neither of us looked back. There was nothing left for us in the past. A TV screen in a store window played a news clip. Victor Delacroix's legal battle was still ongoing. His influence was fading, his name slowly being erased from the industry he once ruled. We had won. But as we passed, I caught something in the reflection of the glass. A figure standing across the street, watching us. I turned my head slightly, but by the time I focused, they were gone. Maybe Althea was right. Power didn't just disappear. Someone would take Victor's place. But that wasn't my problem anymore. I turned to Isolde, smiling. "No matter what comes next, we're ready. Life isn't about the legacy you're born into, it's about the one you choose to create." I fought to reclaim my voice, to break free from the chains of expectations, and to define my own worth. Strength isn't about winning every battle. It's about standing your ground when the world tells you to kneel. We all have the power to rewrite our own stories, to rise, to heal, to build something greater than what was given to us. And if you believe in choosing your own path, in finding your own strength, then this journey is for you. Subscribe, and let's walk this path together.